Hello everyone, and welcome back to Mr. Night Fear. I know many of you listen to these stories to help you fall asleep. So, before you get settled in, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from. And if you're enjoying the episodes, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's get comfortable, relax, and begin. I grew up in a quiet town just outside of Redfield, Indiana. It was the kind of place with one diner, one post office, and more fields than people. My parents both worked long hours, mom at the hardware store, dad at a small engine repair shop, so I usually biked to and from school on my own. It wasn't a big deal. I liked the freedom. The ride home always took me past this giant field. Mostly corn, depending on the season. From a kid's point of view, it felt like it stretched out forever, like one long turn and you'd get swallowed up in it. Our house sat on the far side of that field, and my parents had one rule they drilled into my head. Don't cut through the corn. They worried I'd get turned around without a phone, which, back then, I didn't have. It made sense. That sea of corn looked like it had no end, and I'd heard enough stories about kids getting lost in fields to know better. So every day, I took the long way riding the paved road that curved all the way around it. I didn't mind. I loved biking. Still do, probably because of how often I did it back then. I even went for rides on weekends, just to clear my head. I can't say for sure what day this happened, but it was a weekday, because I had my backpack and was biking home from school. Everything was normal until my bike chain popped off. One minute I was cruising down the road, the next I was coasting to a stop, staring at the slack metal hanging from my derailleur. I tried everything Dad had taught me, flipping the bike, adjusting the tension, but the chain wouldn't go back on. And the idea of dragging my busted bike for miles sounded miserable. No phone. No friends nearby. No ride coming. It was just me. Then I looked over at the cornfield. I knew it was a bad idea. My parents had warned me 100 times. But standing there, sweaty and frustrated, all I could think was how much faster it would be to cut straight through. Just a straight shot. What could go wrong? So I did it. I lifted my bike by the handlebars and stepped into the rows. At first, it wasn't so bad. The narrow path between the stalks was mostly clear. I could walk with the bike beside me, though the corn grew so high it blocked the sky. The light dimmed. The wind died. And that strange hush that only exists in cornfields settled in around me like the world had closed its mouth. I was maybe 10 minutes in when I started glancing behind me. Something about the silence felt off. Not spooky, exactly, just too quiet. Like I wasn't supposed to be there. Then I heard it, a rustle. Soft. Just off to my right. I stopped. Listened. Probably just the wind, I told myself. But it didn't sound like wind. It stopped when I stopped. Started again when I walked. Louder this time. Closer. My chest tightened. I picked up my pace, dragging my bike faster, trying not to panic. I kept telling myself it was an animal, maybe a raccoon or a deer, but something in my gut didn't believe it. The way it moved, it felt like it was tracking me. Then, all at once, the sound vanished. Gone, like it had never been there at all. I paused at a crossing between rows, decided to change direction, just in case. That's when I saw him. Standing dead center in the next path was a man. He looked wrong. Not homeless. Not a farmer. Just wrong. His clothes were stained and torn, like they hadn't been washed in weeks. His arms had long red scratches, thin, raw marks running up and down both forearms, like someone had carved into him with something jagged. He didn't say anything at first. Just stared. Then, in this low, raspy voice, he asked, "You lost, kid?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My legs were frozen, locked in place like I'd stepped in cement. Then he stepped toward me. "I can help you get out," he said, his voice drier now, like his throat was full of dust. I still didn't move. He reached toward me. His hands were shaking, open, like he wanted to grab me, or maybe like he wanted me to come with him. That's when something kicked in. I dropped the bike and ran. He yelled behind me, "Wait. I just want to help you." I didn't believe him. Not for a second. I ran blind through the rows, tearing past cornstalks, hoping I was heading the right way. I could hear him crashing after me, closer than I wanted. The stalk slapped my arms and face. My lungs burned. Then I saw it, an opening. Not the road. Just a small space between rows. I ducked in and crouched low, curling into myself, hiding behind the thickest stalks I could find. And I stayed there. Shaking. Heart racing. Then I saw his boots pass just inches from me. Mud-caked and worn thin. He was mumbling. Something about finding me. "I'll find him," he said, over and over again, like a promise. Eventually, his footsteps faded. But I didn't move. I couldn't. I stayed there until the sun dipped and the sky turned gray. When I finally crawled out and found the road again, it was nearly dark. My legs were cramped. My hands were shaking. But I was alive. I never told my parents. I just said the bike broke and I walked home. But I never took a shortcut through a field again. Let me tell you exactly when it started going downhill. I came running into the house, breathless and shaken. My parents had been out of their minds with worry, Mom in tears, Dad pacing like a storm cloud ready to explode. I told them everything. The cornfield. The man. How I lost the bike. By that point, there wasn't much they could do. The guy was long gone, and my dad's face said he wanted blood. He stormed out, determined to find my bike, but after hours of searching the fields and checking with neighbors, it was just gone. A few days later, they got me a new one. Life moved on, or at least, pretended to. But then something happened that forced us to stop pretending. One afternoon a few weeks later, I came home from school and there it was leaning against the porch like it had never been missing. My old bike. The one I left in the cornfield. I don't remember who froze first, me or my mom. My dad slowly stepped forward and touched the handlebars like they might burn him. That same dent in the frame. That same busted reflector. No doubt about it. It was mine. We moved out of that house less than a month later. They never really brought it up again, not directly. I guess that was their way of coping, burying it. But I never forgot. I couldn't. I was 28 by the time I returned to my hometown of Maple Hollow, a sleepy place tucked between misty hills and long-forgotten railroad tracks in western Pennsylvania. I had tried making it work as a writer, even landed a column gig with an online publication out of Philly, but that all fell apart. Maybe I wasn't built for the fast lane. So I came back to help out around the farm. My parents were getting older, the place was falling apart around them, and though it wasn't the life I'd pictured, I figured I owed it to them. The farmhouse sat in the middle of endless rows of tall corn and fading barns, backed by a cluster of woods that went untouched for decades. Our closest neighbor lived maybe 10 minutes away, a widow named Linda who raised goats and made the best blackberry jam you'd ever taste. Her husband passed a few winters back, and she mostly kept to herself now. It was quiet, simple, and surprisingly peaceful. Exactly what I needed. For the first couple of weeks, things were fine. I fell into a steady rhythm, chores in the morning, quiet dinners with my folks, and long, solitary nights spent trying to write. I've always done my best thinking after dark, when the world slows down and the only sound is the wind tickling the porch screen. I'd moved into the small bedroom upstairs, technically the attic, but cozy enough. From the dormer window, I could see clear across the cornfields and the tree line beyond. Some nights, when the moon was high, the fields looked like silver waves, calm and endless. But then, I started noticing something strange. It began subtly, just a flicker of movement at the edge of the corn rows. Around sunset, I'd look out and see someone. A figure. Standing between the stalks near the back edge of the property, maybe 30 yards out. At first, I thought nothing of it. Could have been Linda, or one of her relatives checking the fence line. But something felt off. The figure didn't move. Didn't walk, wave, or shift its weight. Just stood there. Still. Upright. Silent. I couldn't even tell if it was facing me. I convinced myself it was just a scarecrow I'd never noticed before. My parents had a couple scattered across the fields years ago, and maybe they dragged one out again. But each night, I kept checking. And each night, the figure was back. Always right before the last light dipped below the trees. One evening, the air was thick with humidity, the kind that clings to your skin. I leaned closer to the window and stared, waiting. After a few minutes, I saw it again. But this time, it shifted. Just slightly. And I knew it wasn't a scarecrow. Still, I brushed it off. Maybe someone from town cutting through the property. Maybe Linda's son, if she had one. I hadn't seen her in weeks, but she was getting older, maybe someone was helping out. But over the next few days, the figure moved closer. Every night, it would appear in a different row of corn. Closer to the farmhouse each time. Same time of day. Same eerie stillness. I started to feel it in my chest, a tightening. A kind of dread I hadn't felt since I was a kid. The kind you feel when something's watching you from a dark corner, but you can't quite see it. Finally, I said something to my folks over dinner. They didn't seem bothered. My mom gave a tight-lipped smile and said it was probably Lyle, Linda's nephew, a little strange, but harmless, she said. My dad didn't even look up from his plate. Don't worry about it, he muttered. He's just a drifter type. Keeps to himself. But I couldn't shake the feeling. That night, I stayed out in the barn longer than usual, just tinkering with tools I didn't need. Around twilight, I glanced up toward the corn. My hands went cold. The figure was no longer tucked between the farthest rows. It was standing just past the split rail fence right at the edge of our property. Still. Silent. Watching. I wiped my hands on my jeans and grabbed the flashlight. Part of me wanted to run inside and lock every door. But something else took over, maybe anger, maybe fear, I don't know. I stepped outside and started walking. Toward it. I needed a better look. I walked right up to the edge of the property line and called out, "Hey! Who's there?" But the moment I got close, the figure bolted, turning sharply and darting into a row of tall, brittle corn. I instinctively ran after him, but as I rounded the corner of the field, I saw him vanish, literally diving between the stalks, swallowed up by the field. My chest was pounding as I stood frozen there, eyes sweeping the dense maze of green and gold. But I wasn't about to go stumbling through corn rows blindly. That wasn't bravery, that was stupidity. I wasn't just spooked anymore, I was shaken. Even if it had been a wayward teen or someone from the area, the thought of them hiding out on our property didn't sit right with me. The next morning, I drove down the gravel road to our neighbor's place, hoping for some clarity. She was an older woman named Mabel, lived alone in a weather-worn house tucked behind a line of pines. When she opened the door, I didn't beat around the bush. I asked her point blank if anyone on her property might have wandered into our field the night before. Her face wrinkled into confusion. "Oh, honey," she said softly, "I haven't stepped off my porch after dark in weeks. These old bones don't move like they used to." She added that she had trouble even making it down to the mailbox most days. Then I asked about her son. The one I vaguely remembered helping her out around the place years back. She looked down for a moment, then shook her head. "Cody moved away about 7 years ago. He hasn't lived here in a long time. My mouth went dry. I didn't know who I had seen the night before, but it sure as hell wasn't her son. I left her porch with this slow-spreading dread blooming in my chest. Whoever or whatever I'd seen near the cornfield hadn't come from her place. I went straight home and told my parents everything. My mom was worried right away and wanted to call the sheriff. But my dad brushed it off. "You can't arrest someone for walking through a field," he said. "But if you see them again, wake me up immediately." For the next few days, nothing. No shadows in the corn. No figures lurking near the edge of the trees. I almost let myself believe it was over. Maybe they'd seen me talking to Mabel and decided to steer clear. Or maybe the chase had scared them off. Whatever the reason, I finally exhaled. Then one evening, just before dusk, I was out in the barn wrapping up chores. I remember brushing hay off my jeans when everything around me went black. I don't mean dim, I mean pitch dark. The whole farm lost power in a heartbeat. The porch lights, the kitchen glow, the barn's overhead lamp gone. I never carried my phone while I worked, so I was stuck in total darkness, heart thudding. A part of me already knew what caused it. My gut said this wasn't just a power surge. Fumbling my way toward the shelf by the door, I finally found the flashlight and flicked it on. The narrow beam barely cut through the dark, but I bolted out of the barn, aiming straight for the house. Then I stopped cold. Running inside felt like the smart thing to do, but not the brave thing. I told myself to check the breaker. As I turned toward the back of the house, that's when I heard it. A soft rustling sound, like something brushing against dry corn stalks. The noise came from the cornfield. And it was close. My grip tightened on the flashlight. I turned slowly, lifting the beam and sweeping it across the edge of the field, trying not to breathe too loudly. At first, there was nothing. Just wind against leaves. Then, a flicker of movement at the edge of my vision. I flinched and whipped the light toward it. There, standing just a few feet from the barn, was a man. Tall. Gaunt. Barely any hair on his head, just a few scraggly patches clinging to his scalp. He wore faded denim overalls. And he was staring right at me. His eyes didn't blink. His mouth didn't move. He just stared. I followed his gaze down to his hand. He was holding a garden trowel. Old and rusted, its blade dull but not harmless. Panic surged through me and I ran. Behind me, I heard the unmistakable crunch of boots chasing me. I didn't think. I just sprinted into the cornfield. I could hear him crashing through the stalks right behind me. At the last second, I cut a sharp turn and dove, flat on my stomach, into a tight row of corn. I held my breath, barely able to keep still. He ran right past me. I don't think I've ever felt fear that deep. That cold. That paralyzing. I wanted to make a run for the house. For my phone. For help. But I couldn't move. I stayed there for what felt like hours. Then, slowly, I crawled back through the corn and made a break for the back door. The house was still dark. Still dead quiet. I slammed the door behind me, ran to the landline, and dialed the sheriff's office. Then I ran to wake my parents. The cops arrived fast and swept the area with flashlights and dogs, but they didn't find anything. No sign of the man. No tracks. But they did find the cause of the blackout. Someone had dumped a bucket of water on the breaker box. The surge had tripped the system and shut everything down. The next morning, we installed motion lights and security cameras. I even drove back to Mabel's to warn her again. After that, I stayed on the farm for a few more weeks, but nothing happened. When it came time to leave, I hated it. I hated the idea of leaving my parents alone with something like that still unsolved. But they were hiring help for the heavier chores, and truthfully, my life was calling me elsewhere. I moved to a small town in Iowa, Willow Ridge. Got a boring job that pays okay and lets me keep my head down. It's quiet out here. Peaceful, even. But there's farmland everywhere. Cornfields stretching for miles. And sometimes, when I'm outside at night, I catch myself staring into the rows. Just to make sure no one's standing there. I'm a city guy, through and through. Born in Chicago, raised on honking horns, corner stores, and the kind of light pollution that never lets you see a single star. So when I moved to a quiet place like Silver Hollow, deep in upstate New York, it felt like stepping into someone else's life. About 6 months ago, I found a rental listing online that almost seemed too good to be true, an old farmhouse on a huge patch of land for less than half what I was paying in the city. No neighbors, no noise, just space. The house was small and creaky, but the backyard stretched out for what felt like miles. The oddest part? Right behind the house, just beyond a short wooden fence, was a cornfield. Not a cute little garden plot either, I mean acres of it. The field grew so close that you could stand on the back porch, stretch out your arms, and almost touch both the siding of the house and the fence at the same time. I didn't know who owned the land, and no one ever came to check on it. It looked forgotten, abandoned. But that kind of isolation? It grew on me. Sometimes I'd just stare into that field as the corn swayed in the wind, letting the quiet wrap around me like a blanket. Looking back, I would have stayed longer. I liked the peace. I liked the space. But then came that night, the one that flipped everything. It was mid-October. The kind of night where the air bites your skin and the wind feels like it's whispering secrets through the trees. Most people would be curled up in bed with tea and a blanket. Me? I was out on the back deck, smoking a cigarette with my hands stuffed into my jacket pockets. I've always loved the cold, makes me feel grounded, like I'm part of something ancient. I had just taken one last drag when I heard it. A scream. It wasn't distant. It wasn't a coyote or some weird night bird. It was sharp. Human. It cut right through the wind like a needle through cloth. And it wasn't coming from the road or the woods, it was coming from the cornfield. It sounded like a kid. A young boy, maybe. I didn't even think. I ran back inside, grabbed my hunting rifle, and sprinted out the back door. My boots hit the cold ground hard as the scream rang out again, closer this time. My heart thudded against my ribs. I stopped just before the fence, trying to see into the rows of corn, but the wind was pushing everything around like a wave of gold, and I couldn't see a damn thing. "Hey!" I shouted. "Kid? Shout again so I can find you." Nothing. Just silence. I jumped the fence and picked a row at random, using my phone's flashlight, more like a glow stick at that point, to light the way. I moved fast, yelling out as I went. No response. Just rustling corn and the low hum of the wind. After 10 minutes, I knew I was in too deep. Something felt wrong. Like I wasn't alone, but I couldn't prove it. I stopped, hands shaking, and called 911. Told them I'd heard what sounded like a child screaming in the field. Then I hustled back to the house to wait. The deputies showed up fast, considering how remote the place was. I walked them through what happened, and to my surprise, they let me join the search. We combed the field for nearly half an hour, me, 2 officers, and one of their flashlights that actually worked. We called out over and over, but nothing ever called back. No prints. No disturbed ground. Nothing. Eventually, we gave up. They told me to call again if I heard anything. I nodded, but I was pissed. Either someone was messing with me, or there really was a kid out there who needed help, and that possibility haunted me. As I locked the door behind them and trudged upstairs, I told myself it was probably just a prank. Some bored local teens trying to scare the new guy. But deep down, it didn't feel like that. And then things got worse. I was brushing my teeth when a flicker of orange light caught my eye. I stepped over to the window, confused, and felt my stomach drop. Out in the cornfield, small flames were dancing between the stalks. At first it looked like a few fireflies, but then the glow grew, and I saw it was fire. Real fire. And it was spreading. Shit! I shouted, already flying down the stairs with my phone in one hand, dialing 911. I yanked the hose from the side of the house and sprinted toward the flames, praying it would reach. My sneakers slipped in the dirt as I got to the edge and ran into the field, soaking wet from the waist down as I tried to douse the fire. The wind wasn't helping, but somehow, I got lucky. The flames died quicker than I expected, and within 5 minutes, it was out. I was bent over, catching my breath, when I caught movement from the corner of my eye. I looked up and froze. There was someone in my bedroom window. A figure. Motionless. Watching me. They were inside my house. I dropped the hose and bolted. My boots slammed against the porch. I ripped open the back door and rushed in. The kitchen was wrecked. Cabinets wide open. Fridge door hanging off the hinge. Plates shattered on the floor like someone had ransacked the place looking for something. Then I heard the front door slam. I ran for it, flung it open, but they were gone. No footsteps. No car. Just wind and corn and the thumping of my heart in my ears. I stood there, panting, feeling more lost than I ever had in my life. By the time the fire department and cops arrived, I could barely speak straight. But this time, they took it seriously. Attempted arson, home invasion, it wasn't just weird anymore. It was dangerous. They brought dogs, more officers, even a drone. But once again, nothing. Whoever had been in my house, if it even was a person, was long gone. For the next few weeks, I barely slept. Every sound made my skin crawl. Every gust of wind felt like someone whispering at my door. I kept the rifle loaded beside my bed, and I only left the house during the day. Eventually, I broke the lease and got out. I still don't know what happened. I've told myself it was a prank. Some sick thrill seeker who chose the wrong house to mess with. But every time I think back to that scream, so close, so human, I wonder. What if it wasn't a prank? What if a child really did need help? And I just couldn't find him in time? Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Before I dive into tonight's story, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Factor. If you're anything like me, October gets hectic real fast. Between work, errands, and trying to enjoy spooky season, I barely have time to cook. That's where Factor has truly been a lifesaver. They make it super easy to stay on track with your meals by delivering fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals straight to your door. There's no prep, no cleanup, just heat and eat. With over 35 weekly meal options, including keto, calorie smart, vegan, and high-protein choices, there's always something that fits your lifestyle. I usually go for the high-protein ones after the gym. Their Peruvian chicken with red pepper cauliflower grits and roasted broccoli is amazing. If you want to try it for yourself, head over to factor75.com and use the code 50nightmare to get 50% off your first box and free shipping, plus 20% off your next month. That's code 50nightmare at factor75.com. Now, let me set the scene before we get into the weird part of tonight's story. Our family cat, Cosmo, has always had his own nighttime routine. Ever since I was a kid growing up in Fairhaven, Minnesota, he's slept in the basement. Like clockwork, my parents would scoop him up from wherever he was lounging and set him down on the little landing behind the basement door. They weren't fans of all the cat hair he'd leave behind, especially on their comforter, and honestly, I kind of get it. He's an outdoor cat too, and if we forgot to put him downstairs before bed, he'd yowl at the door at 3 a.m. until someone let him out. The basement's the biggest room in the house, cool in the summer, warm in the winter, so I always figured he liked the space. But just over 2 weeks ago, something shifted. There's this small landing at the top of the basement stairs, just behind the old creaky door. That's where we'd always place him. He'd usually hop down the steps and curl up wherever he felt like. One night, I gently set him on the landing like always and shut the door. As I went to fill my water glass in the kitchen, I heard him start to meow behind the door. That was strange. Normally, he'd already be halfway to his favorite armchair by then. I figured maybe his dish was empty, so I opened the door to check, but the moment it cracked open, Cosmo bolted out and zipped across the living room like something had scared him. His food? Still full. Weird, I thought. I found him crouched behind the couch, picked him up, and gently put him back on the landing. Closed the door. Same as always. But the next 2 nights? Exact same thing. He'd sit there, meowing. Refusing to go down the stairs. Just frozen at the top step like something was waiting down there that he didn't want to deal with. I started to worry that maybe he was just getting older. Slower. But I didn't want to think about that. So I ignored the cries, knowing he'd eventually make his way down when he felt like it. Then came the night he wouldn't come inside at all. Normally, he'd hang out on the porch, waiting to be let in. But this time, he was curled up on the doormat, completely still. I opened the door. He didn't move. I went outside and knelt next to him. Gave him a few slow pats behind the ears. He blinked, but he didn't get up. Just stayed there like he didn't want to cross the threshold. Later that night, I checked again. Still there. Same spot. It was getting cold, so I picked him up and carried him inside. He didn't fight, but he didn't seem happy either. That night, I let him sleep in my room. It was peaceful, like the old days when he used to curl up at my feet. And for a few nights, that became our new routine. But, of course, it didn't last. Dad started getting annoyed, asking who kept leaving the basement door open. Apparently, the cool air was leaking out, and if you've ever lived in an old house in the Midwest, you know how touchy dads get about wasted air conditioning. I figured it was my little sister, Emily. She's the type who leaves the fridge cracked and forgets about it. I didn't think much of it. Cosmo was calm, I was sleeping fine, and life felt almost normal again. Until one night, around 2:30 a.m., I woke up for no reason at all. The room was quiet. Still. I glanced toward the bedroom door and froze. Someone was standing there. Not moving. Just a silhouette in the faint glow coming from the hallway light we always leave on. I could see the outline of a person. Not detailed, just enough to know someone was there. I thought it might be Emily, so I whispered, "Hey, you okay?" No answer. The figure turned and walked away, silent. Too tired to deal with whatever weird sleepwalking moment that was, I rolled over and went back to sleep. But the next morning? Emily swore she hadn't left her room. Said she slept straight through the night. So, who did I see? Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night and seen something standing there, watching you? I used to think that kind of thing only happened in ghost stories. Now I'm not so sure. A couple of days later, we figured out what had been keeping Cosmo away from the basement. It was a flea infestation. The place was crawling with them on the carpet, on the furniture, everywhere. It was nasty. We assumed that's why Cosmo had refused to go down there. It made sense, but it was weird how it all started so suddenly. He'd never had a problem like that before. Cosmo always wore a flea collar, my mom was careful about that. My dad got mad and blamed her for not changing the collar in time. She swore she had. They argued, but then Dad went into full-on cleaning mode. He tore through every inch of the basement, vacuumed the rugs, sprayed everything with flea killer, and even scrubbed the corners by hand. Afterward, he told us to stay upstairs for a few days to let any remaining fleas die without a host. Sounded logical. I figured that was the end of it. But a few nights later, something else happened. I was lying in bed, and I noticed light flickering under my door. It looked like someone was playing with the hallway switch on and off, again and again. At first, I thought maybe it was Dad heading to the bathroom or something. But it just kept going. Longer than normal. Too long. It gave me this weird, creeping feeling in my chest. I didn't want to open the door. I just stared at the glow under it, hoping it would stop. Eventually, it did. I finally fell asleep, but I can still remember the way my chest felt, tight and anxious. Like something was wrong, but I couldn't name it. A few more days went by with nothing strange. Dad said the basement was probably clear now. That was good news. I'd been missing my gaming setup down there. After school one day, I went down to check it out. The moment I stepped off the last stair, I could tell something was off. The fleas were still there. Not as many as before, but enough to notice. That shouldn't have been possible. After all that cleaning, they should have been gone. I went back upstairs and called Dad at work. He said to give it time, that the last few were probably just hanging on and would die soon. But it didn't sit right with me. So the next day after school, I went back down to poke around. I headed toward the back of the basement, to the old storage room. We kept random stuff in their boxes, tools, old holiday decorations. I figured maybe an animal had crawled in and died, and that's what was keeping the fleas around. As soon as I opened the door, the smell hit me. It was thick and sour. Like something rotting. It burned my nose and made my eyes sting. I followed the smell toward the far side of the room, where there was an unfinished crawlspace that connected to the house's plumbing. It was pitch black in there. And the smell just got worse the closer I got. I didn't want to go in. I turned around to grab a flashlight. And that's when I heard it. Breathing. Low and slow. At first, I thought maybe it was the pipes. But then it grew louder. Steadier. It sounded human. I froze. My chest got tight again. My brain screamed at me to run, but my feet stayed locked in place. Then I saw movement. Something darted across the very end of the crawlspace. Fast. Then an arm. A pale hand shot out toward me. I jumped back with everything I had and bolted upstairs, slamming the basement door shut behind me. I called the police. They showed up pretty quickly and did a full sweep of the house. Nothing. No person. No body. Just empty chip bags and food wrappers stashed deep in the crawlspace. They said someone had probably snuck in and was living down there. Maybe a homeless person who used the storm door at the back to sneak in and out. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. How long had they been living there? What had they seen? Had they ever watched us without us knowing? My parents were just as shocked as I was. Since that day, we keep the basement door locked. Cosmo still won't even go near it. I was only about 7 when this all happened, so I don't remember every tiny detail. But my parents have filled in a lot of the gaps over the years. And there are certain moments that I remember like they happened yesterday. Here's one of them. I'm an only child. Yeah, it was kind of lonely sometimes, but it also meant my parents were super involved in my life. They went out of their way to make everything feel special. Every Halloween, my parents would turn our basement into a haunted house. Nothing too crazy, just some decorations, fake cobwebs, spooky music, and strobe lights. It was their way of giving back. They made it into a food drive. To get in, you had to donate canned goods, and all of it went to the local pantry. They even made flyers and handed them out at my elementary school and a few others nearby. Most of the visitors were kids from school and their parents, but there were always a few strangers we didn't recognize. My parents loved that part. The more people who came, the more food we collected, and the more exciting the haunted house felt. We lived in this big brick house out on the edge of Brookville, Indiana. It was an old neighborhood full of historic homes, the kind with rules about renovations and original fixtures. Our place had creaky floors, narrow hallways, and flickering lights that made shadows dance on the walls at night. Even before everything happened, it already felt a little haunted. Every year, my cousins Jeff, Rick, Chaz, and Eric would drive in from out of state to help my folks set up the big Halloween night. It was kind of our thing. We'd turn the old basement into a haunted walkthrough for the neighborhood kids. My cousins always went all out, dressing in creepy costumes and jumping out at just the right moments to give someone a good scare. That year, they decided to wear matching anonymous masks. You know, the kind, plain white faces with hollow eyes and no expression. The kind that makes you feel watched, even though it doesn't blink. It was a huge hit, like always. By early evening, the line outside was already winding down the sidewalk. Later, my parents told me something strange. Apparently, a man had shown up before the crowd got there. He wasn't with any kids, which was already weird because the haunted basement was mainly for families. He said his wife would be by later with their daughter, but he just wanted to drop off some canned goods early for the donation box. My parents didn't recognize him, but they figured maybe he was new in town. They thanked him, took the cans, and stood there kind of awkwardly until he finally turned and walked off without another word. Nobody thought much of it at the time. The night went on, and the basement got pretty chaotic. My friends and I were running through the maze of cobwebs and fake skeletons, laughing and shouting, the way kids do when they're just a little too old to be scared, but secretly still are. Then one of my friends ran up to me crying. She was shaking, red in the face, and struggling to speak clearly. I asked her what happened, and she said someone in one of those white masks had grabbed her wrist tight and tried to pull her into a dark utility closet down the hall. I told her it was probably just one of my cousins messing around. But she shook her head. She said this person didn't say anything, didn't laugh, didn't let go until she screamed. The look on her face, it was different. She wasn't joking. She was scared. So I found my parents and told them everything. They didn't hesitate, they went straight to the basement. My cousins were still in costume and spread out in their usual scare spots. Jeff was by the fake coffin, Chaz behind the curtain, and Rick crouched in the corner under the fog machine. But one thing was off. Eric was missing. That's when the tension started. Moments later, Eric came rushing down the stairs, panting. He said he'd just gone upstairs for a quick bathroom break. But when he came back, his mask was gone. He figured one of the other guys had swiped it as a prank. That's when my dad pulled the plug on everything. He shut down the haunted house right then and there. Everyone was ushered outside. The police were called. They searched the entire house, but of course, they didn't find anyone. No forced entry. Nothing missing. That night, I tried to brush it off. Told myself it was all just a misunderstanding. I went to bed thinking it was over. But around 2 a.m., I woke up to a soft tapping. At first, I thought it was just tree branches brushing against the house. But it was rhythmic. Deliberate. Knock. 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 I didn't dare look. I just pulled the covers over my chin and held my breath. Eventually, it stopped, and I must have drifted off again. But later, closer to dawn, I woke up to a scratching sound. Like fingernails slowly dragging across the window frame. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't a branch. It sounded intentional. I jumped out of bed and threw open the curtain. There, on the other side of the glass, just inches away, was someone in an anonymous mask, white, blank, unmoving. I screamed. My parents ran in, but by the time they looked, whoever it was had vanished. We called the cops again. They searched the yard. They looked for footprints. Nothing. Not a trace. Weeks went by. Then months. The haunted house became just a memory. My parents got serious about security cameras, motion lights, alarms. Even the upstairs windows got reinforced. But eventually, things calmed down. Until one afternoon. I got home from school, threw my bag on the floor, and found something waiting for me on my bed. It was a white mask. Just like the ones from Halloween. But this one had something scrawled on the forehead in thick black Sharpie. My name. That was the moment the fear sank its teeth into me. Whoever it was, they knew exactly who I was. They'd been in my room. We called the police again. Filed another report. They couldn't do much. Just told us to be careful. After that, my parents doubled down. Alarm system. Window sensors. Lights with timers. It helped for a while. But at night, when everything was quiet, I still heard things. Light tapping. Faint scratching. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe my brain was just stuck in a loop. I eventually moved out. Tried to leave that chapter behind. But sometimes, even now, I catch myself staring at windows longer than I should. I live about 30 minutes away now, in a town called Maple Ridge. Got a job at a local Mexican place on the edge of town. Nothing fancy. The kind of place that stays open late and plays mariachi music even after the last customer leaves. I took the job because I needed the money. I was behind on rent and had bills piling up. Plus, night shifts meant I had most of the day free. It didn't seem like a bad deal at the time. The place itself was fine. But the manager, Carlos, something always felt off about him. He gave me the creeps. Never looked you in the eye. Always mumbling under his breath. He'd keep me late, even when I wasn't scheduled to close. Made weird comments. Never broke any laws, at least, not that I could prove. But I always felt like I had to keep one eye on him. Still, I needed the job. One night, I was the last one there. I just started mopping the kitchen floor when I heard it. A low, dragging sound coming from the back hallway. Let me tell you about something that happened when I used to work late nights at a small diner called Pine Hollow Eats, right on the edge of a quiet town in upstate New York. I was just cleaning up like I always did, mopping the linoleum floors under the soft glow of old flickering lights, when I started hearing it. It was faint at first, soft thuds, followed by what sounded like slow, dragging scrapes. Not above. Not outside. Below me. Under the floor. I stopped moving and held my breath. The sounds kept switching, thud, scrape, thud. It went on for a minute before everything went completely silent. I tried to shrug it off. Maybe the pipes. Maybe a raccoon or something under the building. But deep down, it didn't sit right. Then it started happening every night. The same sounds. Right as the place would get quiet and I was finishing up my shift. It felt timed. Like it knew I was there alone. After a few nights, I mentioned it to the owner. His name was Rick Alvarez. He was always in a rush, kind of jittery, and barely looked up when I said it. "Don't worry about it," he muttered. "This place doesn't even have a basement." That's when my stomach twisted. I'd seen the narrow window wells around the back of the building. I didn't say anything at first, just nodded and let it go. But I knew he was lying. I wanted to believe there was a good reason, so I waited another day, hoping maybe the noises would stop. They didn't. The next night, I brought it up again. I told Rick I'd seen the basement windows, below ground level, and whatever was making those sounds wasn't a damn pipe. That's when he finally looked me in the eye, and something in his expression changed. It was like a curtain dropped. "There used to be a basement," he said slowly. "But it was sealed up a long time ago. No one can get in. No one can get out. Just focus on your job, okay? Don't go snooping around where you don't belong." His voice was low and sharp, and it made my skin crawl. The way he said it, like a warning more than advice, stuck with me. But I needed the paycheck. I told myself I was overthinking it. Maybe it really was just rats or something. But every night after that, the sounds came back. The same thudding. The same scraping. And it never came during the day. Only at night. Only when I was there alone. Then came the night I finally gave in to curiosity. After locking up, I walked around back and crouched down by one of those window wells. My phone flashlight barely cut through the thick glass. It was just pitch black down there. I was about to stand up and walk away when suddenly a light flickered on inside. Only for a second. Then it snapped off. I froze. My heart dropped into my stomach. I didn't see anything clearly, but I felt something. Something watching me. I ran straight to my car and drove home without looking back. I didn't sleep at all that night. Something in my gut told me not to mention it to Rick. Not yet. The next time I closed, I did the same thing. I shouldn't have, but I needed to know what I saw. I walked around the building again. Same window. I crouched, leaned in. And there it was. A face right up against the glass. It was a man, but he didn't look right. His hair was long, matted, like he hadn't seen a mirror in months. His face was gray, filthy. His eyes were sunken in, but wide so wide and glowing yellow under the dim light from my phone. His lips peeled back into this unhinged smile, and then he slammed his forehead against the glass. I screamed and stumbled back, nearly twisting my ankle as I ran to my car. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get the keys in the ignition. I sped home. I didn't care about traffic or cops or anything. I just needed to be away from that place. The next day, I broke down and told Rick everything. I was ready for him to laugh, or maybe get mad. But he didn't. He just let out a long sigh, like I'd opened a door he'd tried to keep shut. Then he sat me down and told me the truth. The man I'd seen? It was his younger brother, Darren. He'd been living in the sealed-off basement for years. According to Rick, Darren had serious mental health issues. Violent ones. And Rick didn't trust hospitals or institutions. So instead of getting him help, he hid him. He told me the previous owners had poured concrete over the original stairwell and sealed it, but Rick found another way in through a locked storm hatch behind the dumpster. He'd been sneaking Darren food and supplies, keeping him hidden from everyone, including the law. He begged me not to tell anyone. Please, he said. He's not safe out there. And the town's not safe from him. I wanted to quit then and there. But rent was due. I was barely making it. And even with everything I'd seen, some twisted part of me still hoped it was just a bad dream. I kept working. But I avoided Rick. I avoided the back of the building. I tried to pretend none of it had happened. Until the night I couldn't pretend anymore. It was near closing, cold and quiet. I was locking up when I noticed something near the tree line across the parking lot. A figure. Still. Watching. My chest tightened. I turned away and tried to walk calmly to my car, but every step made my pulse pound harder. That's when I heard footsteps. Not fast, but heavy. Uneven. I turned, and there he was. Darren. He was limping, but coming straight for me with those wild yellow eyes. He didn't say a word. Just this broken, crooked grin as he hobbled toward me faster than I expected. I barely got my door unlocked in time. As I slammed it shut, he slammed his face against the window. Smeared it with dirt, blood, and sweat. Then he started pounding. Over and over. I peeled out of the lot so fast, my tires screeched. That was the last night I ever worked at Pine Hollow Eats. I called the police as soon as I got home, but I never went back. I didn't ask what happened next. Whether they found Darren. Whether Rick got arrested. Whether the diner ever reopened. I didn't want to know. Sometimes, though, I still wonder, what if Darren got out? What if Rick blamed me? And what if one day, I see that same face in my window? Would you go back? Because I won't. Not ever. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. I've always liked walking at night. There's something about the quiet that makes things feel easier. Like the world slows down a bit. I'm a welder by trade. Been doing it over 40 years now. I live alone on an old ranch just outside a town called Hollow Creek, Texas. It's just me and my dog, Cooper. The house is way too big for one person, but I couldn't bring myself to move after my wife, Denise, passed. Cancer took her 6 winters ago. Our kids are grown and long gone. So now, it's just Cooper and me. That night, I'd had a long shift in the garage, patching up a busted tractor frame. My joints ached. I grabbed my coat and took Cooper out for a loop around the property. The cold air felt good. Cooper trotted beside me like always. Sometimes I wonder if he's the only thing keeping me sane. We were almost back at the house when I saw something. Just a flicker. I glanced up toward the second-floor window, the one from the bedroom Denise and I used to share. Something shifted behind the glass. I froze. That room's been shut for years. I haven't gone in since she died. My stomach turned. No one should have been up there. The idea of someone sneaking into my house made my blood boil. I stormed inside, heart pounding, Cooper barking behind me. I ran up the stairs 2 at a time. The door creaked open. I stepped inside. Empty. Still. Just like I left it. The old bed frame, her packed boxes, even the faint smell of lilacs still lingered. Nothing was out of place. I searched the closet. Under the bed. Even the attic hatch. Nothing. I stood there in the dark like a fool, trying to convince myself it was just shadows. But it didn't feel like shadows. That night, Cooper growled in his sleep. He never growls unless there's something out there. I sat up, wide awake. My bedroom was quiet, until I heard it. Creaking. Soft but steady. Right above me. The exact room I'd checked. I told myself it was just the house settling old wood in winter chill, but my gut said otherwise. I almost went for the shotgun in the hallway closet, but I held back. I didn't want to start thinking like that. I grabbed my flashlight and climbed the stairs. The beam cut through the dark. The door was still shut. I opened it slowly. Again, nothing. But it felt wrong. Heavier, somehow. I stood in the doorway for a while, just listening. The next night, I woke up and found the kitchen lights on. I never leave lights on. I know I turned them off before bed. That's when the fear really kicked in. Someone was in my house. I called the Hollow Creek Sheriff's Office. 2 deputies came out and searched the place. Top to bottom. Cooper barked at the basement door, but they found nothing. They were polite. Told me to call if anything else happened. But I could tell they didn't believe me. That same night, I couldn't sleep. Something pulled me toward the upstairs bedroom. I don't know why. Curiosity, maybe. Or some buried instinct. I opened the door and froze. Denise's clothes were scattered across the floor. Shirts. Scarves. Her favorite blue cardigan. I had packed everything into boxes years ago. Now it looked like someone had been rifling through them. My mouth went dry. And then I saw her. There was a woman standing in the doorway. Just watching me. She didn't move. Didn't speak. She wasn't Denise. Too short. too still. Her face was hidden in shadow, but she stood like she'd always belonged there. I'd never felt terror like that. Not once in my life. Without thinking, I lunged. She turned faster than I thought possible, and vanished down the stairs. I chased after her, Cooper right behind me. By the time we got outside, the yard was empty. No footprints. No sign of anyone at all. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. Or the one after that. I kept hearing things, soft creaks, shuffles on the stairs, drawers sliding open upstairs. Every sound made my heart jump. I started sleeping with the shotgun beside me. Just in case. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't call my brother. I was raised the old way, handle your own problems. So I tried. But it didn't stop. One night, I was sitting in my chair by the fireplace. Cooper was asleep at my feet. I glanced out the window. And there she was. Standing in the yard. Just watching me. I couldn't see her face. Just the outline. Pale and still beneath the moonlight. My heart skipped. I grabbed the shotgun and bolted outside, yelling, hoping to scare her off. Fired 2 shots into the air. She didn't flinch. Then she turned and walked toward the woods. Calm. Like she'd done this before. I searched with Cooper for an hour. Nothing. Not even broken twigs. Since then, I haven't seen her again. But that doesn't mean she's gone. I feel her. Watching. Some nights, I leave the hallway light on. Just in case. I check the locks twice. Sometimes 3 times. Cooper hasn't growled in weeks. But I'm still waiting. Whatever she is, whoever she is, I know she'll come back. And I'll be ready. God help me, I'll be ready. I never imagined this would be my life. Working nights, barely sleeping, and running on caffeine like it's oxygen. The job isn't awful, but the hours drain you. Most nights I crash the second I hit the bed. Other nights? I'm so jittery from energy drinks that sleep feels impossible. It was just after 2 a.m. when I was finally driving home. That night shift buzz was still humming through my system. The roads were dark and empty, and it actually felt kind of peaceful to be back behind the wheel of my own car again. But my stomach had other plans. It hit me, I hadn't eaten anything since late afternoon. I was starving. And wired. There's a McDonald's off Route 17 about 10 minutes from my place in Willow Creek. It's one of the only spots open 24/7 out there. It's not like I eat fast food every day, but sometimes, nothing hits like salty fries at 2 in the morning. Something about it just settles the nerves. I pulled into the drive-thru and was a little surprised to see a few cars ahead of me. I mean, it was a Tuesday night, well, technically Wednesday morning. Not exactly prime dining time. I waited, zoning out like usual. That's when I saw it. In the farthest corner of the parking lot, tucked away near a busted-up lamppost, was this old beat-up Volkswagen Jetta. Its windows were blacked out, and it was backed into the darkest spot of the lot. The McDonald's dining room was closed, only drive-thru orders allowed at that hour. So why was it just sitting there? It wasn't in the employee zone either, those spots were on the other side of the building. Maybe someone was eating alone in their car, which I get. I've done that plenty of times after long shifts. But something about it felt off. It wasn't moving. It wasn't lit up. Just there, like it was watching. I grabbed my food and rolled out, but I didn't feel like heading straight home. Still too jumpy. I didn't want to just sit in my driveway either. There's a nature preserve about 5 minutes from my neighborhood. People from town call it Devil's Ridge, which sounds a lot spookier than it really is. It's this massive wooded area stretching along the back edge of town, and at the top of the ridge there's a lookout spot that shows the whole valley. On a clear night, you can even see the distant lights of Maple Hollow to the north. The main road loops around the preserve, but they close the gates to cars at night. Still, you can park outside and walk the path to the top, just a wide, paved trail. No creepy woods to hike through. It used to be our spot back in high school. Me and my old friends would hang out up there all the time, talk, mess around, watch storms roll in. I hadn't been back in years. So I figured, why not? A little nostalgia, some quiet, and maybe a chance to clear my head. When I pulled into the gravel patch at the trail entrance, it was totally empty. The kind of empty that makes the world feel paused. No wind, no animals, just silence. I left the engine running for a second, debating if I really wanted to do this. Then, headlights. Another car turned into the lot behind me. I glanced in the mirror. Volkswagen Jetta. The same one from McDonald's. I didn't even question it, I knew it was the same. Same dents, same tinted windows, same busted headlight. My hands got tight on the steering wheel. I parked at an angle, keeping some distance. The engine was off, but I kept the window cracked. No sound came from their car. No music, no chatter, not even a phone screen lighting up inside. I sat there for a minute, just listening. Waiting. Nothing happened. Eventually, the fear eased off. Maybe it was just another night owl like me, someone grabbing food and looking for a quiet spot. This was a popular hangout, after all, at least for the locals. Still, I couldn't ignore the knot in my stomach. My brain kept circling the same question: what are the odds? I didn't want to go home, but I didn't want to be alone either. So I called up my buddy Sebastian, who lives over in Cedar Grove, about 10 minutes away. I figured if he didn't answer, I'd eat my fries and bounce. To my surprise, he picked up. He was wide awake, working on a paper for his grad program. I told him what was going on, half laughing, half serious. He didn't hesitate. I'm on my way. That made me feel better. While I waited, I kept my eyes on the Volkswagen. Still hadn't moved. Still just parked. I munched on a few fries and tried to scroll through my phone, but my eyes kept drifting back to that car. When Sebastian finally pulled up, I actually exhaled. We got out, nodded at each other, and started walking up the paved trail together. As we got a little higher, I turned for one last glance down at the lot. That's when I saw it. All 4 doors of the Volkswagen opened at the same time. 4 men stepped out tall, motionless, dressed in dark clothes. They stood in a loose circle around the car, not speaking, just slowly turning to look at one another. It wasn't normal. I elbowed Sebastian. He followed my gaze and went quiet. Probably just a bunch of guys going for a smoke, he said, a little too casually. But they hadn't lit anything. They hadn't moved. We kept walking. The trail curved, and soon the parking lot vanished behind the trees. I tried to let it go. I told myself we were fine. That we weren't being followed. That people do weird things sometimes. At the top of the ridge, the city lights glittered below us. The breeze was crisp and clean. There was that old stone barrier we always used to sit on, the one keeping people from accidentally wandering off the cliff. We sat there, just like old times. The view was peaceful. It should have calmed me. But I kept thinking about those 4 men. Standing. Watching. Waiting. What were they really doing there? And why did it feel like they already knew where I was going that night? We sat there, sharing fries and talking like we used to. For a moment, it actually felt normal. Calm. Like the old days. But that peace didn't last long. We heard voices loud, laughing, and coming fast. When we turned around, 3 guys were walking toward us from the direction of the woods. One of them was passing around what looked like a joint. They were acting friendly at first, which helped ease some of the tension in my chest. But instead of finding their own space, they walked right up to us, like they wanted to be part of our night. The guy holding the joint had tattoos all up his arms and a silver ring through his nose. He had a grin that didn't feel quite right, just a little too sharp. He asked if we wanted to smoke. We both said no, kind of awkwardly, and one of the other guys snorted and called us soft. Sebastian laughed under his breath, but I could tell he didn't think it was funny. I asked the first guy, "You work around here or something?" His smile faded in an instant. His face stiffened, and his eyes narrowed, like my question had caught him off guard. The 2 other guys froze too, all of them just standing there now, looking at us in total silence. And that's when I remembered there had been 4 guys in the car earlier. Not 3. One was missing. My body tensed. I didn't say anything, but I knew Sebastian noticed too. His posture shifted just slightly, like he was ready to bolt. Finally, the one with the joint said he worked night shifts and had just gotten off. He pulled the hood off his head, revealing a dark gray polo shirt with the local Sonic Drive-In logo on it. Honestly, it looked old, like he hadn't worked there in weeks. He told us he and his buddies came out to this nature trail every night to smoke and hang out. It was their spot, he said. It almost made sense. But something was off. Way off. The tone. The stillness in their eyes. The way they kept glancing over their shoulders, like they were waiting for someone. Sebastian nodded, then leaned toward me and whispered that we should get moving. We started walking back toward the parking lot when Sebastian stopped cold and pointed into the woods. That's when I saw him, the 4th guy. He was barely visible, standing between 2 trees. Just staring. He was holding something in his hand. I couldn't see what it was, but it glinted in the dark. My stomach dropped. The moment he noticed us looking, he started walking forward. We didn't wait. We ran. The trail was narrow and winding, and every step I took I expected to feel a hand grab my shoulder. I heard the pounding of feet behind us, more than one pair, and the muffled voices of the guys yelling. We didn't look back. Just sprinted. When we finally saw the glow of the parking lot lights, it felt like breaking the surface of water. We dove into our cars, slammed the doors shut, and tore out of there without a word. In the rearview mirror, I saw them reaching their car too. I didn't want to drive straight home. Something in my gut told me not to. I called Sebastian and told him to meet me back near his place, a few blocks away. We regrouped near a quiet street, both of us panting, our hands still shaking. Neither of us could explain what had just happened. Sebastian showed me a photo on his phone. He had managed to snap it while the guys were distracted. It showed the 3 standing in front of the trailhead, grinning like nothing was wrong. He sent it to me, but I had no idea what we were supposed to do with it. I had the next day off, and I wasn't letting this go. I convinced Sebastian to come with me back to Sonic, just to see if someone recognized the guy. We talked to one of the younger workers behind the counter and showed him the photo. His face changed the second he saw it. He asked us where we took it, and when we told him, he shook his head slowly. He said the guy used to work there. His name was Travis. And he'd gotten fired a few months ago after his girlfriend, who also worked there, broke up with him. Things got ugly. Travis started showing up to her shifts, stalking her after work, and even camping out in his car behind the dumpster. The police had gotten involved. A restraining order was filed. But apparently, he kept coming back, just not during the day. He'd been sleeping in his car. In that same wooded lot where we ran into him. We were horrified. Why he followed us, I still don't know. Maybe we reminded him of someone. Maybe he just snapped. But the fact that he was out there, waiting, it chilled me to the bone. I just hope the cops catch him next time. Because if they don't, who knows what he'll try next. It's been a week, and I haven't gone back to that trail or to that Sonic. I keep checking my rearview mirror when I drive. I'm not sure I'll ever fully shake the feeling. This all happened a while ago. I grew up in Ash Creek, Oregon. Not much goes on here. Finding ways to pass the time was always a challenge. Back in high school, my friends and I were all about exploring weird, forgotten places, empty barns, old motels, even a dried-up factory near the train yard. We didn't think of it as urban exploration back then. It was just something to do when you had nothing else. Looking back, I wonder how many close calls we had without even realizing it. Some folks get a thrill out of exploring abandoned places. For a while, we were those folks. There was this old Methodist chapel just outside of Pine Hollow, Michigan, a sleepy town with more deer than people. The building had been condemned for years, but it became our go-to haunt when we were bored or chasing a little adrenaline. I remember the address like it's etched into my memory, 1437, Waverly Road. The place gave off that kind of energy. Creepy, but weirdly magnetic. One chilly October evening, 6 of us decided to go back inside, me, Megan, Riley, Johnny, Max, and Lauren. We packed a few drinks and figured we'd hang out in the basement like we used to. The church sat behind an old, sagging chain-link fence. 8 feet tall, rusty, and leaning like it had given up. We had to climb it, of course. The front doors had been boarded shut years ago, so we always used this busted window on the side. The moment you stepped inside, you noticed the floor was gone, completely torn out. Just dirt. And right in the middle, a concrete staircase led down to the basement. That's where we always went. For some reason, that basement held our curiosity hostage. There were 3 rooms down there. Only one had an actual door, the other 2 were just empty door frames. The biggest room was always our hangout spot. It had some leftover furniture, busted folding chairs, a sunken couch that smelled like mold, and a few pieces of broken wood we never figured out. Johnny was already getting loud from just a few sips of cider, and I had to hush him more than once. He wasn't exactly the subtle type. But being in a group made it feel safer. There's something comforting about knowing you're not alone in a place like that. We were goofing off, maybe had music playing, can't remember for sure. What I do remember is the loud slam of that door. It echoed like a gunshot. All of us froze. Our laughter died instantly. We exchanged wide-eyed stares, waiting for someone to laugh it off or explain it. But no one had moved near the door. Without hesitation, Megan, Riley, and Johnny bolted straight up the stairs and out the window. That left me, Max, and Lauren. We weren't ready to leave. Not yet. I'll admit my heart was hammering in my chest, but I wasn't going to let a little wind or noise chase me off. Max and Lauren looked just as spooked, but we had the same unspoken thought, let's find out what it was. We stood in silence for a long minute before walking to the door that had slammed shut. It creaked when we pushed it open. The room inside was small, looked like it used to be an office or dressing room. Right away, I saw a dresser with a cracked mirror. On the mirror were red smudges, smeared unevenly across the glass. At first, I figured it was old paint. But as I stepped closer, I noticed the texture. It was still sticky. Fresh. I didn't say a word, but I could feel the tension in the room change. Like we'd just stepped into something we weren't supposed to see. Then I saw the photograph. It was tucked behind a candle stub on top of the dresser, a faded black and white picture of a woman in a wedding dress. She was smiling. But her eyes, something about them felt wrong. Like the smile didn't reach them. I took a step back, every instinct in my body screaming that we needed to leave. Just as I turned to tell the others, we heard another sound. Not from that room, from the other one. The one we had just been in. It was a low, dragging noise. Like something being pulled across the dirt. That's when Max and Lauren looked at each other and decided they'd had enough. We grabbed our stuff and ran. No one talked. No one dared to look back until we'd climbed the fence and hit the cold pavement. Only then did I stop. I turned around, just for a second. And in the broken window, the one we always used, I swear I saw a figure. Just standing there. Watching us. I pray to this day it was a trick of the light. Or maybe my mind filling in blanks. But deep down, I know what I saw. And I wasn't the only one. None of us ever talked about it again. And we never, ever went back. Years later, I drove by that road again. The chapel was gone. Demolished. Flattened like it was never there. Just an empty lot now. But I'll never forget that night. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we'd stayed just a little longer. And sometimes, I wonder if someone still goes back. Maybe looking for her. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. It was a cold night in early March, a couple of years back now. I had just gotten home from a long day at work. I'd been working late, so it was almost midnight when I finally stepped through the front door. I was completely wiped out. All I wanted was to crack open a cold beer and rest my feet on the couch. That's exactly what I did. There's something about a cold beer after a tough day that just hits right. I didn't even bother turning on the TV at first. I just sat there with my eyes closed, feet up, trying to push away the stressful thoughts buzzing in my head. After a few minutes, I started flipping through the channels, but nothing caught my attention. After a while, I gave up and decided to just enjoy the silence with my beer. But, like so many things in my life, peace was too much to ask for. Less than 10 seconds later, every light in the house went out at once. You know that little crackling pop sound that comes just before the power cuts? I hate that noise more than anything. For some reason, our power would go out sometimes without warning. Actually, now that I think about it, it still does. Anyway, my first thought was to check outside to see if the neighbors had power. I stepped out, closing the door behind me to keep the warmth inside just in case. It was late, but at least one house down the street still had their lights on. So I knew the problem was definitely mine. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, already knowing this was going to ruin what little enjoyment I had left for the night. I turned back toward the door, but when I grabbed the handle, it didn't move. I froze. The door was locked. I tried again, but it was definitely stuck. What the hell was going on? I started banging on the door, yelling my wife's name, hoping she was awake and could help. No answer. I peered through the glass, but it was pitch black inside. Then I ran around to the back of the house. That door was locked too. Panic started creeping in. My wife usually left doors unlocked, this just didn't make sense. I sprinted to the side of the house where the breaker box was. That's when I stopped dead in my tracks. Our garden hose, which I was sure had been neatly coiled, was lying in the grass, tangled just below the box. The realization hit hard. Someone had cut the power on purpose. Without thinking, I ran to the nearest window and looked inside again. I saw two flashlights moving erratically in the dark, like someone was rifling through our things. They were stealing stuff. I felt a surge of anger. How could someone do this while I was literally home? I reached for my phone, but it wasn't in my pocket. I'd left it on the couch. I cursed under my breath and decided I'd run to my neighbor's house to borrow his. As I headed down the street, a darker thought hit me. My wife was still inside. Probably asleep. Vulnerable. I couldn't leave her there, not even for a minute. I dashed back and grabbed some loose rocks from the yard. I started throwing them at the bedroom window, hoping to wake her. After the third rock, the window slid open. Before she could say anything, I whispered what was happening and told her to hide in the closet. She didn't hesitate. Her head disappeared inside immediately. I ran to the neighbor's porch and knocked as hard as I could. I explained everything quickly and used his phone to call the police. I waited on his porch, praying my wife was safe. When the police arrived, I ran out to them, telling the story as fast as I could. They rushed inside, but it was too late. The back door was wide open. The burglars were gone, along with countless valuables. My wife was more shaken than I was. When she told the officers what happened, I couldn't stop blaming myself for not protecting her better. I'll never forgive myself for leaving her alone in the house with those men. Seconds after I told her to hide, she heard the bedroom door kicked open. One of the intruders walked in, cocked a gun, and stood perfectly still, listening for any sounds. She said it was the most terrified she's ever been. I think the rocks I threw must have scared them off. The scariest part? We still live in that house. We don't plan on moving anytime soon. Sometimes, I wonder what could have happened if I hadn't stepped outside just for a moment. I've always lived in my older brother's shadow. Not bitter about it, just the truth. I had been trying to get my life together for almost 6 years, watching my older brother build a solid business while I struggled to find my own path. Recently, I moved back into my parents' house in a small town called Pine Lake, hoping to get back on my feet. It felt like a step backward, but honestly, I didn't have many other options. I stayed in the basement to give them space. It wasn't too bad down there, it was almost like my own little apartment. There was a small kitchenette, a bathroom, an office nook, a bedroom, and even a TV where I could play my old video games. With all that, I hardly went upstairs. Living down there made me feel less like a burden. One night, either Friday or Saturday, I was lying in bed as a fierce storm howled outside. Rain hammered the windows, and the wind rattled the whole old wooden house. It was one of the wildest storms I'd ever seen. My parents were out of town for the weekend, so I had the place to myself, which I actually liked. There was something comforting about curling up below ground during a raging storm. I was almost asleep, soothed by the steady patter of rain, when suddenly all the lights went out. Everything clicked off at once, plunging me into total darkness. I groaned, annoyed, guessing the storm had knocked out the power. For a moment, I thought about checking the breaker, but the thought of wandering around in the dark while the storm screamed outside made me decide to wait until morning. As I settled back into bed, I heard a loud thud against one of the basement windows. It was heavy, like something had hit it hard, not just a branch blown by the wind. That sound was sharp and deliberate. I couldn't just ignore it. Reluctantly, I grabbed my phone and flicked on the flashlight. The basement was pitch black, except for the storm's distant rumbles and the rain's relentless beating against the glass. Rubbing the sleep from my eyes, I peered through the window, and my heart nearly stopped. A man's face was pressed right against the glass. His skin was pale and wet, his eyes wide and fixed on me. For a brief second, our eyes met. Then he pulled away. I stumbled back, nearly dropping my phone. Before I could catch my breath, I heard footsteps overhead. The old floorboards creaked softly. Someone was in the house. I was home alone, and these strangers had just broken in. The worst part? One of them knew I was down in the basement. Panic slammed into me, but I forced myself to think. I pulled out my phone to call 911, but there was no signal. The power outage had knocked out the Wi-Fi, and the basement's thick walls blocked my cell service. I was trapped. I couldn't just wait for them to find me. I decided to sneak upstairs quietly, slip out the front door, and call for help. With my heart pounding, I crept up the basement stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. Peeking around the corner, I froze. 3 figures with flashlights moved through my dark house. One flashlight beam caught a glimpse of a gun. My muscles tensed, and I held my breath. Then I heard it, a calm, casual voice said, "Alex is in the basement. Go find him." How did they know my name? I backed down the stairs as quietly as I could, struggling to keep my breathing steady, but inside, terror was taking over. They were coming for me. I didn't know what would happen once they found me. I looked around desperately, searching for a place to hide. There was no time. I had to get out of that house within the next minute, or I was done for. The only way out was through one of the basement windows, but every one of them was nailed shut from the inside. No other options. I grabbed a nearby stool, climbed into the window well, and smashed the glass with my elbow. Glass shards flew everywhere, cutting into my skin, but I didn't care. I crawled through the broken window and tumbled out into the pouring rain. My body ached from the cuts, but adrenaline and fear pushed me forward so I barely noticed. The heavy rain soaked me instantly as I sprinted across the muddy yard, careful not to slip. Once I put some distance between myself and that cursed house, my phone finally got a signal. I called the police, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold the phone steady. By the time the officers searched the place, whoever had been inside was long gone. So much had been stolen, I don't even want to list it all. The blackout was no accident, it was planned, of course. My parents were furious, threatening to kick me out of the house. I had to plead with them, saying there was nothing more I could have done. Eventually, they calmed down, but I'm still shaken by everything that happened. I still don't know who those people were, or how they knew my name. I hate to think what would have happened if they caught me. I live in a quiet suburb outside of Ashwood, but several busier towns aren't far by car. A few months ago, I started a night security job at a warehouse in a nearby industrial park. It's a massive building, stretched out over acres, isolated from the main roads with rows of tall metal shelves and huge loading docks. The job is simple routine patrols, locking up, making sure nothing gets messed with. It's usually quiet, almost too quiet, but I like the solitude. Most nights passed without incident. One Thursday night, a heavy storm rolled in. Rain hammered the roof as I checked my phone for weather updates, dreading the drive home in this mess. Fortunately, the night was slow, giving me something to focus on besides the weather. The warehouse lights flickered a few times but stayed on. Then, about an hour in, everything went dark, total blackout. I was annoyed. Being the only person on duty, fixing the power was on me. I'd been trained for this, but I never imagined I'd have to handle it alone. I left my little security office to start troubleshooting. The instructions said to unplug some heavy machines before resetting breakers, so I began that task. My flashlight was my only light source. The place felt eerie in the dark. Without the hum of the lights, the silence seemed to press down on me. Every creak of the old building was louder. My footsteps echoed like thunder. As I moved down one aisle, a sudden clang echoed from deep inside the warehouse. I jumped but convinced myself it was just the storm shaking the roof or metal shutters. Still, I decided to check each aisle carefully. Then, rounding a corner, I froze. A faint light flickered between the shelves, just like my flashlight. It clicked off quickly, but I had definitely seen it. Nobody was supposed to be here until morning. My heart started pounding. Why would someone else be in the warehouse? I thought about calling out but held back. At the spot where I'd seen the light, there was nothing, just endless rows of crates and shelves stacked high. I was starting to panic but knew I wasn't imagining things. I had to keep going. Maybe calling the police was the smart move, but I wasn't sure if what I saw was enough to prove anything. Maybe I was wrong. If I hadn't been given a taser by my company, I probably would have called the cops right then. As I kept walking, a strange smell hit me. It was a mix of damp metal and old water, stale and sour. The smell came from one of the loading bays, a darker corner where crates piled up to the ceiling. I shone my flashlight around and noticed something strange. 2 sets of wet footprints led into one of the aisles. In that moment, all I wanted was to run the other way and call the police. But if someone was sneaking around, it was up to me to find out. I was only doing my job, but curiosity got the best of me. I decided to follow the trail quietly, keeping my flashlight low so no one would spot me. As I got closer, I caught faint whispers, barely audible, like two people talking a few aisles down. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was sharp, urgent, even tense. I clicked off my flashlight and held my breath, trying to stay silent. Clutching my taser, I edged closer to the voices. When I turned the corner and raised my flashlight, no one was there. The whispers had stopped too. It was like they vanished into thin air. They'd been right in front of me, how could they disappear that fast? My nerves were shot. I figured this wasn't worth my paycheck, so I headed straight for the circuit room to get the power back on, ignoring everything else. In the dark, I fumbled with the breakers. Then I heard something scrape across the floor nearby. I swung my flashlight and caught the edge of a metal tool, a crowbar, lying just a few feet away. That wasn't there before. This was serious. Someone was in the warehouse with me, and they weren't friendly. I yelled out that I was armed, bluffing with the taser but hoping it'd work. I needed out, fast. Just as I moved toward the exit, a loud crash echoed from the far end of the building, followed by rushing footsteps. Adrenaline hit me hard. I ran toward the noise. Rounding the corner, I saw them, two figures dressed in black, standing in the aisle. One held a crowbar, the same kind I'd seen on the floor. They glanced at me, then suddenly sprinted my way. Without thinking, I turned and ran. All the confidence I'd had vanished. Their heavy footsteps pounded behind me. I didn't look back. I dodged through aisles, praying I knew the layout better than they did. After what felt like forever, the footsteps faded. I stopped, gasping for breath. They weren't chasing me anymore. I made it outside and called the police, begging them to hurry. They arrived quicker than I expected. The two strangers were gone, but the officers were kind and even helped me get the power restored. My boss wasn't so understanding. He gave me hell for running away. I almost lost my job over it. But I still can't shake how strange everything was. Those people weren't just messing around, they chased me with a weapon. The worst part? I still work the night shift in that warehouse. At least now, my boss makes sure two people work together after dark. I'm just thankful they never caught me. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. This happened when I was 18. Now, I'm 22, and I live in a quiet town in Texas. It was my senior year of high school, just when COVID started to sweep through the country. Schools were shutting down, and everything went into lockdown. The world came to a halt. Despite the quarantine orders, my friends and I were spending more time outside, just trying to escape the suffocating silence of isolation. With everything closed, we had to find new ways to entertain ourselves. I've always had a thing for urban exploration, hunting down forgotten, haunted places. To this day, I still get a thrill from it. I've had a few close calls before, interacting with the homeless, creepy encounters with cults, and even having a gun pointed at me, but nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what happened on this one night. It all started when I met Clarissa. She was in one of my classes, and we were just starting to get close. We weren't officially dating, but I convinced her to join me for a late-night exploration of a local park. Clarissa didn't believe in ghosts, and she wasn't the type to be easily scared, but she wasn't exactly thrilled with the idea, either. The park we chose was O.P. Schnabel Park in San Antonio, Texas. During the day, it's beautiful, peaceful, and safe. But at night, it can be unsettling. There's something about the way the trees twist, and how the park is so secluded, that makes you feel like you're being watched. In 2016, a woman named Lauren Bump was tragically murdered there, and in 2021, a boy was shot while exploring. The park has a dark history, but we still went. We arrived around 3 a.m. The park was pitch black, the trees blocking out any light from the moon. I didn't want to use my flashlight because it would draw attention, and besides, it's easier to let your eyes adjust to the dark. But tonight, something felt off. The silence was heavy. We were only about 15 to 20 minutes into walking the main trail, and I could tell it was too quiet for comfort. I suggested we take a shortcut, an off-road trail that looped back to the parking lot. Clarissa agreed, and we started down the trail. But not 2 minutes into it, something strange happened. Out of nowhere, a flute began playing. It was surreal. The music was slow and deliberate, like it was part of an eerie symphony. It wasn't a random melody, it felt purposeful. But as soothing as it may have sounded in any other context, this time, it felt wrong. Clarissa stopped dead in her tracks, her face pale. I froze too. We both just stood there, listening, trying to figure out where it was coming from. The flute didn't sound like it was far away, it was as if someone was right there with us. At first, I thought it might be someone playing a prank. But when Clarissa started praying, I realized this was something else. She was trembling in fear, and I could feel it too. There was something deeply unsettling about it. It was impossible to tell where the sound came from. It seemed to be coming from the direction of the main trail, about 30 yards away. But it grew louder, closer, until it sounded as if it were right on top of us. "Please, God, save us," Clarissa whispered, her voice shaky. I couldn't focus on the music anymore. I was too worried about getting us out of there. I've never been scared of much, but the way she was acting, and the eerie music, put a knot in my stomach. I told her, "Don't worry, I won't let anything happen to you." We had two choices: head back to where the flute was playing, or go back through the woods, where we heard that strange noise earlier. I opted for the latter and told her we should run. So we sprinted down the off-road trail, away from the music. As we ran, the music stopped. But I didn't notice it at first. I was too focused on getting as far from that sound as possible. We hadn't gotten far, maybe 30 feet, when we heard the rustling of leaves. It was fast, too fast, like something big was moving in the trees. Then, out of nowhere, something dashed across the trail in front of us. I didn't see it clearly. There was no shape or figure, but I felt its presence. I couldn't explain it, but it felt like something massive had just passed by, like a truck speeding by in the dark. The sound of the leaves crunching underfoot was deafening, but we didn't hear it approaching. It just appeared. Clarissa gasped. We turned and bolted back the way we came, running as fast as we could. As we returned to the place where the flute had been playing, it started up again, this time louder, sharper. The tune had changed, though. It sounded more like an eerie chime, almost like a ghostly version of a music box. I couldn't tell where the music was coming from. It surrounded us, echoing through the trees, like it was mocking us, pulling us deeper into the woods. The more I listened, the more trapped I felt. The path back was blocked by whatever had been playing the music, and the path forward led us back to that strange sound. My instincts kicked in. We had to move, and fast. The flute wasn't just a weird sound, it was a warning. We stood at the crossroads, unsure of which way to go. The flute continued to play, and the rustling in the trees seemed to be closing in on us. Someone was out there. And we were stuck in the middle of it. It was a chilly night in early March when I found myself in the woods outside of Pine Lake, a small town in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains. I had just finished a grueling shift at the local hospital and decided to meet up with Clarissa for a short hike through the trails. The night air was crisp, with the scent of pine needles and damp earth filling the air. We ventured off the main trail, which was paved but still a little eerie, leading us deeper into the thick woods. As we made our way onto a less traveled off-road path, the darkness pressed in closer, and the trees grew thicker, casting long shadows on the ground. It was unnerving, and Clarissa was already starting to tremble, but I reassured her it would be okay. Suddenly, I heard it, a soft, distant melody carried on the wind. It was a flute, playing a haunting tune that seemed to float through the trees. The music was so eerie that it sent chills down my spine. That's odd, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There's no one else out here. Clarissa's eyes widened in fear. Let's go back, she whispered, pulling at my sleeve. I knew she was scared, and honestly, I felt it too, but I didn't want to show it. There was something off about the flute song. It was too clear for it to be some random sound carried from the town. I told Clarissa to hold on as we turned around and headed back toward the main trail. Our pace quickened, and the adrenaline kicked in, turning our leisurely walk into a near sprint. We passed a random porta potty along the way, and the thought of someone or something being inside made my heart race even faster. I couldn't help but imagine someone hiding in there, waiting. Thankfully, there was no one, but the tension didn't ease. As we neared the entrance to the woods, the flute's melody stopped abruptly. It was like it had never been there. We reached my truck, parked alone at the trailhead, and I sped out of the woods as quickly as I could. The next day, I told my friends about the experience, and I couldn't stop searching online for any explanation. People spoke of ghosts, cults, strange animal noises, but nothing about a lone flute playing in the woods at 3 a.m. I scoured every corner of the internet but found nothing that could explain what we'd heard. There are a few houses near the edge of the forest, but they're miles away, and we were deep in the woods. There's no way the sound could have traveled that far. The music was too distinct, too clear for something natural. I didn't know if it was a person, a spirit, or something more sinister. I still couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't just some random noise. It felt paranormal. That flute, so rhythmic, almost like a call, had a haunting quality to it, but there was no explanation. I tried to find something rational, something that could make sense of it, but all I found was uncertainty. I never went back to those woods at night. I still explore other places, old houses, dark forests, but nothing has ever felt quite like that night. The air in the woods had been thick with something I couldn't explain, and the sound of that flute still echoes in my mind. Maybe it was something from another world, something tied to the land, or maybe it was just my mind playing tricks from exhaustion. But whatever it was enough to keep me from returning. I had just finished a long shift at the hospital. It was around 2 a.m., and after dealing with meds and paperwork, I was ready to head home. The pharmacy was quiet as usual, and my feet ached from walking through the hospital's long hallways. But as I pushed my cart to the next room, I noticed that the light in this one was off. I opened the door, half expecting to see one of the nurses, but instead, I froze. There was someone hunched over by the sharp spin. If you're not familiar, that's where we dispose of needles and vials after use. Whoever was in the room was rummaging through it. The only thing I could think was, what the hell? A while back, someone had been caught doing the same thing, looking for morphine, and they were immediately fired. So, I quickly flicked the light switch, about to ask what they were doing. But when the light came on, the room was empty. I stood there, staring at the spot where the person had been. My heart was beating faster now. It was so late, and I'd been awake for hours, so I convinced myself I was probably just seeing things. Hallucinations, right? I brushed it off, finished stocking the surgery rooms, and decided to get back to the pharmacy to finish my shift. Every night, around 2 a.m., I was responsible for delivering patient-specific medications to the nurses' stations. The hospital layout is pretty straightforward, but tonight, I took the long route, just to clear my head. I was on the 5th floor, the 5152 wing, when I delivered the meds. I made my way over to the 5455 wing, which was undergoing remodeling, and that's when I felt a chill. There was no one there. No nurses, no patients, just the silence of the empty hallway. The floor was eerily quiet, and the distant hum of machines was the only sound. The 5th floor was usually pretty quiet at this hour, but seeing these empty rooms, the closed doors, just gave me a strange feeling. As I walked down the hall, I heard a rattling sound, like something was moving in one of the rooms. It stopped when I reached room 5512. I hesitated but looked inside. My stomach turned when I saw an elderly man, shaking violently, blood oozing from his eyes, nose, and mouth. He was making sounds like something out of a nightmare, something like the zombies you hear about in movies, gurgling, groaning. The monitor at his bedside was beeping wildly, just like it would if someone were coding. I froze. It took everything in me not to scream, but I quickly stepped out of the doorway, deciding to get help. But when I stepped back in, the room was empty. The bed was made. The monitor was off. There wasn't a single sign of anyone being there. I was sure I had just seen a hallucination, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I rushed back to the elevator and down to the first floor where the pharmacy was. As I stepped into the elevator, an old man in a security uniform entered. He patted me on the shoulder and smiled as he passed. My stomach dropped. It was the same man I had just seen in 5512. His eyes locked with mine, and for a split second, I thought I might say something. But before I could, the elevator doors shut. When the doors opened again on the 5th floor, I didn't press the button, but the elevator came back down to the first floor, empty. My heart skipped a beat. There was no one inside. I didn't stay in the pharmacy much longer. I just sat down, waiting for my shift to end. When my girlfriend arrived to pick me up, I didn't mention the old man, the blood, or the rattling bed. I didn't want to sound crazy. But I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen. Back home, I looked up what happens when you don't sleep for over 24 hours. According to the article, hallucinations can start between 30 and 48 hours without rest. It seemed like a logical explanation, considering I was on hour 38. The pharmacy is directly below the 5455 wing, and I often look up at the window from the elevator. When I was leaving that night, I glanced up, and there, in the window, was the same old man, staring back at me. The same smile, the same eyes. I quickly turned away and got into my girlfriend's car, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. Even now, almost 2 weeks later, I still don't know what happened that night. Was it a hallucination from lack of sleep? Or something more? I've never seen that man again. But every time I drive past the hospital, I find myself glancing up at that window, wondering if I'll see him again. It was a quiet evening in the small town of Maplewood, the kind of place where everyone knew each other, and the streets were always empty after dark. My home was nestled on a corner, tucked away from the view of the neighbors. The street curved just right, providing us with the kind of privacy most people would envy. There were only 8 houses on the block, and the nearest neighbor lived far enough away that you couldn't see into each other's windows. Down the block, just beyond the last house, there was a small stretch of woods. The trees were dense, casting shadows even during the day. It was the kind of area that felt peaceful, until the wind shifted. My boyfriend, Alex, had gone to Las Vegas for a bachelor party that October weekend. I had the house to myself from Thursday to Monday. That Friday night, I decided to invite some friends over for a wine night. We laughed and chatted, the soft glow of candles flickering as we watched a horror movie in the living room. Then, the doorbell rang. We all fell silent, looking at each other with wide eyes. It was late, and the sound of the doorbell felt too eerie, too out of place. I stood up and crept toward the front window, trying to catch a glimpse of who might be outside. Through the glass panel at the top of the door, I could see the shadows of cars in the driveway, but no one on the porch. There were 4 cars parked outside, so clearly, someone knew we were home. I went back to my friends, and we agreed it was likely just some kids playing a prank. After everyone left, I locked the door and went to bed, my mind still a little on edge but convinced it was nothing. But I wasn't able to sleep for long. Not even an hour later, I was jolted awake by the doorbell ringing again. It was 1 a.m. I felt my heart race. No one should be at my door at this hour. I immediately called Alex, but he picked up sounding drunk and loud, a bar's noise in the background. He went into a bathroom so he could hear me better. "Stay in the bedroom, don't open the door for anyone," he said, his voice slurred. He didn't suggest calling the police, so I didn't either, yet. I hung up, trying to calm myself, but then came the sound of tapping, a faint, rhythmic clicking noise. And then a knock on my window. A man's voice pierced the silence. "Hey, anyone home? I need some help out here." Thank God the blinds were closed. I couldn't see him, but I could hear the soft tapping again, followed by a second knock. "I know you're home." My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't heard him walk away. He was still out there. That's when I called the police. I whispered into the phone, telling them someone was trying to break into my house. The officer on the line assured me they'd send someone right over. Within 10 minutes, the doorbell rang again, followed by loud knocking. I hesitated but finally went to the door, asking who it was. "It's the police," came a voice, but it was different from the man I had heard earlier. I peered through the small glass panel and saw two officers standing outside. The taller one immediately stepped inside, without waiting for me to invite him. "We're here about the disturbance," he said, walking past me. I quickly explained everything, how the man had been ringing the bell and knocking on the window. The officer, however, didn't seem to take me seriously. He barely let me finish before cutting me off. "Shush. I get it, but you didn't see him, so what exactly do you want us to do?" His words felt more dismissive than helpful. His partner stayed silent in the back, not saying a word. "Ma'am, if you're not going to cooperate, we can leave," the taller officer said, his tone cold. I was stunned. I had never expected this kind of response from the police. I apologized, feeling shaken. "I'm just scared," I murmured. The officers walked around the house, shining their flashlights in corners and along the yard. It didn't feel like a proper search. They came back and told me there was nothing they could do without evidence or cameras. With that, they left. That night, after they were gone, I felt a little safer, but still on edge. I stayed awake, knowing that whoever it was, had seen me call the police. The next morning, I awoke to sunlight streaming through the blinds, relieved it was finally over. On Saturday, I went to a Halloween party at my friend Emily's house. It was a fun night, full of laughter and costumes. I dressed as Velma from Scooby-Doo, and Emily was Daphne. We had a blast, and I left her house around 1 a.m., feeling good after a few beers but nothing too crazy. When I got home, I immediately noticed a cold draft sweeping through the house. As I set my things down on the dining table, I realized one of the windows was open. I went to close it, wondering if I had forgotten to shut it before leaving. But as I walked to the bathroom to brush my teeth, I froze. The basement door was wide open. A strange clicking sound filled the air, coming from below. I moved toward the basement stairs and froze again when the sound stopped suddenly. Finally home, a voice said from the darkness below. That was enough. I slammed the basement door shut and grabbed my phone, rushing outside to my neighbor's house. I pounded on the door until he answered and, with his help, called the police. Unfortunately, it was the same two officers who came back. This time, my neighbor stood by me as I spoke with the officers. The taller cop didn't seem quite as rude this time, though he was still curt. They checked the house again, but this time, I pointed out the places where someone could have hidden. After a thorough search, they confirmed there was no one inside. I packed a bag and went to stay with my sister until Alex returned. From that night forward, I made sure all the windows were locked tight. It wasn't until months later that I could be in the house by myself again. And even now, I sometimes wake in the middle of the night, thinking I hear knocks on the window. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. My name is Chris. I live in a small town called Maple Hollow. It's quiet here. Lots of trees. Lots of old houses. People leave their doors unlocked. Or, they used to. This happened last fall. Just before Halloween. The air had that chilly bite. The kind that stings your nose and makes the leaves crunch louder than usual. I had just gone through a breakup. My fiancée, Lauren, left me. Said I was too distant. She wasn't wrong. After losing my mom the year before, I changed. I stopped talking to people. I kept to myself. I worked nights as a security officer for the town library. That job meant I got home around 3 a.m. every night. And to get to my house, I always drove down Willow Road. It's a short street. Just 6 houses. But there's this one old streetlight in the middle. Everyone in town knows it. It flickers. Always has. The power companies tried to fix it. New bulbs, new wiring. Nothing works. Some folks say it's haunted. I didn't believe in that stuff. At least, not back then. One night, in late October, something strange happened. It was just past 3:15 a.m. I turned onto Willow Road like always. I was tired. My head was full of old memories. Songs on the radio made me feel sad. That's when I saw it. Someone was standing under the streetlight. At first, I thought maybe it was a neighbor. But no one was supposed to be out that late. The figure was still. Not moving. Not even swaying. The light above them flickered. On. Off. On. Off. Each time it blinked, the figure looked different. Taller. Then shorter. Arms by its side. Then arms spread wide. But it never stepped forward. Just stood there, under that broken light. I slowed down but didn't stop. I told myself it was nothing. A trick of the shadows. Maybe just a tired brain playing games. I pulled into my driveway, grabbed my lunchbox, and walked up to my porch. But something made me turn around. That figure, it was gone. I looked down the street. Nothing but fog and leaves moving in the wind. I went inside and locked the door. The next night, I told myself I was being silly. Same time. Same road. And sure enough, the figure was back. Same spot. Same flickering light. But this time, it looked closer. I drove by slower. Tried to see a face. But there wasn't one. I swear to you, it had no face. Just skin. Pale and smooth. Like a doll that hadn't been painted yet. It turned its head toward me. Even without eyes, I knew it was looking right at me. I sped up. Rushed into the driveway. Fumbled with my keys. When I finally got inside, I peeked out the curtains. It wasn't there. But the streetlight was still flickering. By the third night, I was scared. But I told myself I'd stop. I'd get out. I'd talk to it. That night, I drove slower. My hands were shaking. The figure was there. Waiting. Same spot. Same broken light. I parked the car right in the middle of the road. Got out. My boots crunched on the pavement. Hey! I called out. No answer. I took a step closer. My breath clouded in front of me. I could hear the wind. The light buzzed above. Another step. And then it moved. Not walked. Glitched. Like a jump in an old VHS tape. It was 5 feet closer. No sound. Just there. I stumbled back. My heart was pounding. I turned to run, but I heard it speak. Low. Whispery. Like it was inside my ear. You're not alone. I didn't look back. I ran to the car. Drove home. Didn't sleep. After that night, I stopped taking Willow Road. Took the longer way home. Just to avoid that one streetlight. But I kept seeing things. Glimpses in my rearview mirror. Flickers outside my bedroom window. One night, I woke up to find the streetlight flickering outside my house. It wasn't there before. But now, it stood right at the edge of my front lawn. Flickering. Buzzing. Waiting. I stayed inside. Closed all the blinds. But the light still flickered through the cracks. It's been a year now. The streetlight is gone again. But sometimes, on cold autumn nights, I see that flicker in the distance. And I hear that voice. You're not alone. And deep down, I know. I'm not. Jake moved back to El Calo, a quiet town he hadn't seen in years. His mom had passed away last winter, and the house had been sitting empty ever since. It was old, creaky, and cold, but it was home. He had nowhere else to go. He worked nights now. Security at the high school. Not much ever happened there. Just empty halls and flickering hallway lights. The quiet helped him think, though his thoughts were often heavy. He hadn't really gotten over losing his mom. She raised him alone. After her death, Jake stopped talking to most people. He shut off his social media. He just faded into the background. That first week back, things were calm. The air was crisp. It was early November. Wind rattled the windows at night, and the leaves made a dry whisper outside. He didn't mind it. The quiet felt peaceful. But then, something changed. One night, as he was driving home from work, he passed a narrow road he hadn't noticed before. Winter Creek Road. There was no sign. Just an old streetlight at the corner. It flickered once as he passed. Jake didn't think much of it until the next night. This time, the light turned on the moment he drove by. Again, he didn't stop. But a strange feeling crept in. Like someone had been waiting for him. The third night, it flickered again. Only this time, it stayed on as he drove away. He looked in his rearview mirror. There was someone standing under it. Just standing. Still. A person. Too far to see clearly. Jake slowed the car but didn't stop. The figure didn't move. He told himself it was just someone walking late at night. Maybe a hiker. Maybe a neighbor. Still, something about it didn't sit right. The fourth night, he pulled over. He rolled down the window. The wind was sharp and smelled like wood smoke. The streetlight was on again. But the road beneath it looked darker than usual. The trees on either side leaned inward like they were trying to hide something. The figure stood there again. Closer this time. Jake leaned forward. It looked like a woman. Pale. Wearing a long gray coat. No movement. No sound. He called out, "Ma'am? Are you okay?" No answer. He turned on his high beams. The figure was gone. Just like that. The light above flickered twice and went dark. Jake drove home fast. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding. The house creaked with the wind. The air felt colder than before. The next night, he avoided Winter Creek Road. But when he got home, his porch light was out. The bulb had been new. He opened the door and froze. On the floor, right inside the door, was a wet footprint. Bare. Small. Like a woman's. He lived alone. Jake checked the whole house. Nothing was out of place. But the air inside felt heavier, like someone had just left. He didn't sleep at all. The following day, he talked to Officer Green at the diner. "Hey," Jake said, "you know anything about Winter Creek Road?" Green looked up slowly. "Why?" Jake shrugged. Just passed it a few times. Weird light. Thought I saw someone standing there. Green was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "That place? Locals say a woman used to live down there. Long time ago. Her husband died in the war. She used to stand by the road every night, waiting for his truck to come back. It never did." Jake frowned. "So what happened to her?" "She disappeared one winter. Nobody found her body. Just her shoes. Sitting under the streetlight." Jake didn't say anything. He finished his coffee in silence. That night, he took the long way home. But when he pulled into his driveway, the porch light was on again. He hadn't fixed it. It flickered as he stepped closer. Then it went out. Jake paused. His breath made little clouds in the air. He opened the front door. On the table inside was an old photograph. His mother. In the garden. Smiling. He hadn't seen that photo in years. He hadn't brought it with him. The next morning, he checked the attic. In the corner, near an old trunk, was a single, damp footprint. He didn't know what to do. He wasn't scared exactly, but something was wrong. Something that didn't want to be ignored. The last night, he drove to Winter Creek Road one final time. He stopped beneath the old streetlight. It flickered to life. Jake got out of the car. The wind was still. No sound. The trees didn't move. He stepped closer to the middle of the road. "What do you want?" he whispered. The light above him flickered once, then glowed steady. Across the road, the figure appeared. Closer now. He could see her eyes. She looked like she wanted to say something. But her lips didn't move. Jake stepped forward, but the light above buzzed loudly. He turned back. The road behind him was gone. Fog. Just fog. Thick and heavy, like it swallowed the world. When he looked back, the figure was gone. Only the cold remained. Jake drove home in silence. The light followed him in the mirror. It stayed on until he turned the last corner. He never saw it again. But sometimes, when the house gets too quiet, he hears a knock at the door. Just one. Soft. Slow. He never opens it. "My name is Chris. I grew up in a small town called Maple Hollow. You've probably never heard of it. It's quiet. Not much happens here. After my dad passed, I moved back to take care of my mom. The house felt different now. Emptier. Colder. It was late October. Leaves covered the streets. The wind was always blowing. At night, you could hear it howl through the old wooden boards. I didn't mind the quiet. After years in the city, silence felt good. Safe. But something about that fall didn't feel right. There's a street in town called Willow Street. It's short, only 5 houses long. One of the streetlights flickers. It's been doing that for years. But this year, it flickered differently. Every night at the same time, 3:13 a.m., the light would blink fast, then stop. Then blink again. Like it was signaling something. I noticed it because my bedroom window faced that street. Every time I woke up around then, the light would be blinking. One night, I decided to record it. Just to see if it was in my head. I set my phone by the window and hit record before I went to bed. When I checked the video the next morning, the light was blinking. But that wasn't the strange part. At 3:13, the light blinked fast, then stopped. And right after that, a shadow moved across the street. I froze. The figure didn't walk. It glided. Like it wasn't really touching the ground. It was tall. Thin. Almost too thin. I thought maybe it was a person. Maybe someone out late. But who walks like that? The next night, I stayed up. I watched from the window. Wrapped in a blanket. Lights off. At 3:13 a.m., the light blinked. And I saw it again. The shadow stood under the streetlight. Not moving. Just standing there. Facing my house. I closed the curtain. My heart was pounding. The next morning, I told my mom. She laughed. Probably just some kid messing around. But I knew it wasn't a kid. I didn't sleep the next night. Instead, I went outside. I stood across the street near the old mailbox. I wanted to prove I wasn't imagining it. The cold wind cut through my jacket. The street was empty. Quiet. Then the light blinked. I turned. And it was there. Not close. Just standing beneath the light. Its head tilted, like it was curious. Its arms hung by its sides, too long for a person. I stepped back. But it didn't move. The light blinked again, and it was gone. No footsteps. No sound. Just gone. I ran inside and locked every door. I didn't sleep that night. The next few days, I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was a trick of the eye. Maybe I was stressed. Still dealing with grief. But then strange things started happening inside the house. My phone alarm would go off at 3:13 a.m., even though I hadn't set it. The hallway light would turn on by itself. I'd hear soft knocking at the front door, but no one was ever there. One night, I heard whispering. It came from the living room. I crept out of bed, holding a flashlight. The house was dark. The whispering stopped when I stepped into the hall. Then, the front door creaked. I slowly walked toward it. There, behind the glass, stood the shadow. This time, it was closer. Almost touching the door. I didn't open it. I couldn't move. It just stood there. Watching. Waiting. Then the porch light flickered and it was gone. I didn't tell my mom this time. She wouldn't believe me. Maybe no one would. So I called Officer Daniels. He's lived in Maple Hollow forever. I didn't expect him to believe me either, but I had to try. To my surprise, he nodded slowly when I told him. "You're not the first to see it," he said. "We call it the Willow Watcher. Shows up when people come back home with grief in their heart." I blinked. What does it want? Daniels looked out the window. No one knows. But it doesn't hurt anyone. It just watches. Until it doesn't. I didn't ask what that meant. I didn't want to know. After that night, I kept the windows closed. I avoided looking at the streetlight. But I still felt it watching. Even now, weeks later, the light still blinks at 3:13 a.m. I moved my bed to the other side of the house. I try to sleep through the night. But some nights, I still wake up at that time. And when I do, I don't look out the window. I don't want to see it again. But sometimes, I hear it. A soft creak outside. A whisper through the wall. And once, I swear I saw a long shadow pass across the hallway inside the house. I don't know what it wants. Or if it will ever leave. Maybe it's tied to the sadness I carry. Maybe it feeds on silence, on secrets, on pain. I've started writing everything down. Hoping that maybe sharing the story makes it lose its power. But I still wonder. What happens if one night I do open the door? What do you think would happen? Have you ever felt like something was watching, even when no one was there? My name's Chris. I live in a small town called Elmridge. It's quiet. The kind of place where you know everyone's dog's name, even if you forget the owners. A few years ago, I lost my wife to cancer. After that, I moved into a small house near the edge of town. Just me and my dog, Buck. Life got real quiet after that. Too quiet sometimes. My house sits close to Miller's Road. It's not a busy road. Just a long, curvy path lined with trees and old fences. There's an old house on that road too, an abandoned farmhouse. No one goes there. Everyone says it's haunted. I never believed in that kind of thing. I thought it was just town talk. Stories people told to make Halloween feel spooky. But I'm not so sure anymore. It started one cold October night. I couldn't sleep. I had this weird feeling in my chest, like something was off. So I got out of bed, made some tea, and stood by the window. That's when I saw it. A light. It flickered on in the window of the old farmhouse. At first, I thought it was a prank. Kids sneaking in. But the light didn't move. It just stayed on. Bright. Still. Then it turned off. Just like that. The next night, it happened again. Same time. Same window. Same light. I told myself not to worry. Maybe some teens found a way to hook up power. Maybe it was just a flashlight. But something felt wrong. On the third night, I decided to drive past the house. Buck was in the passenger seat, quiet. He always barked at things, but that night, he didn't make a sound. The light was on again. But as I got closer, I saw something move in the window. A figure. Standing still. Watching. I stopped the car. Rolled down the window. The air was cold. The trees barely moved. And then I heard it. A whisper. I couldn't tell what it said. It sounded like it came from inside my own car. I turned to look at Buck. He was staring straight ahead, ears flat, tail tucked. I'd never seen him like that. The figure in the window was gone. The light shut off. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I went to the sheriff's office. Told them what I saw. One of the deputies, Lauren, said she'd go check it out with me. She was young, but she believed me. We went that evening, just before dark. The front door of the farmhouse was locked with a rusty chain. We circled around and found a window open in the back. Inside, the house smelled like dust and something else, something sour. The floorboards creaked under our boots. There was no light. No power. But in the living room, we found a lamp. Old. Plugged into nothing. And next to it? A photo. It showed a family. A man, a woman, and a little boy. The boy had a strange smile. His eyes were wide. Lauren pointed to the boy. "That's weird," she whispered. "I think I've seen him before." I asked where. She didn't answer. Suddenly, the lamp turned on. No click. No sound. Just light. We both jumped. Lauren pulled out her radio, but it crackled hard, louder than it should. Then we heard a voice through it. A child's voice. "Don't leave," it said. The radio died. We ran. Back through the window. Back to the car. As we drove away, Lauren didn't speak. Her hands were shaking. I didn't go near that road for a few days. But I kept thinking about the photo. That boy. That voice. Then, 3 nights later, I was home reading when the power in my house went out. Everything went black. And then, just outside my window, a light came on. Not inside the house. Outside. It was floating. Soft. Flickering like a candle. And beside it, that boy. Standing still. Barefoot. Eyes wide. He didn't speak. Just stared. I blinked. He was gone. The light too. The power came back a minute later. Since then, he's shown up 6 more times. Always at night. Always by a window. Sometimes in the corner of a room. Sometimes in the reflection of the TV when it's off. I tried moving. I went to stay with my sister in New Jersey for a while. But even there, the light came back. So did the boy. No one else sees him. Only me. I went back to Elmridge last month. Back to my little house. Buck's older now. He sleeps a lot. But some nights, I see him stare into dark corners. His ears perk up. He growls, low and soft. The farmhouse on Miller's Road? It burned down last winter. No one knows how. But sometimes, late at night, if I drive by that spot, the light is still there. Floating. Flickering. Like it never left. Like it's waiting. Hey everyone. I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way. I live in a quiet town called Hollow Creek, tucked somewhere between the woods and forgotten train tracks. It's the kind of place where you wave at strangers and never lock your front door. At least, that's how it used to be. My name's Officer Daniel Myers. I've been working night shifts for the past 10 years. I've seen drunk teens crash into trees, a few petty fights, the occasional coyote near a chicken coop. But nothing ever truly strange until last October. It started on a cold Thursday night. I remember because it was the day after Halloween, and fake cobwebs still clung to porches. The air smelled like wet leaves, and the wind howled through the empty streets. I had just finished checking in on the Miller farm. Their youngest swore she saw a witch by the tree line. It was probably just a deer. I reassured them, made some small talk, and headed back to the cruiser. The street was quiet. Too quiet. I was driving down Maple Row, one of our oldest streets. Most of the houses there are worn down but lived in porches with creaky swings and mailbox flags that never seem to drop. Then I saw him. Under the old streetlight near the cemetery gate. He was standing perfectly still. Not walking. Not swaying. Just standing. From a distance, he looked like a man in his 40s. Medium build. Wearing a long dark coat and a flat cap. I slowed down. As my headlight swept over him, he didn't flinch. Didn't look at me. Just kept staring straight ahead, toward the cemetery. I rolled down my window. "Hey, sir. Everything okay?" No answer. The wind picked up, pushing leaves across the road. The streetlight above him flickered once, twice, then held steady. I parked, got out, and took a few cautious steps toward him. "Sir? You all right? You can't be standing out here this late." Still nothing. I got closer. Close enough to see his breath in the air. But I didn't hear it. No sound. Not even a sniffle or the rustling of his coat. Just wind. I stepped right in front of him, about 6 feet away. "You need help?" That's when he turned his head, slowly. His eyes weren't right. Too wide. Too dark. Not scared. Not confused. Just empty. And then, he smiled. It wasn't a normal smile. It was small, stretched tight across his face, like it didn't belong there. I took a step back. That smile never moved. I radioed it in standard protocol. Possible intoxicated male, Maple Row near cemetery. Unresponsive. The dispatcher asked if I needed backup. I said no. I wish I had said yes. When I looked back up, he was gone. Not walking away. Not running. Just gone. There was nowhere to hide. No bushes. No open gates. Just an empty road and a single flickering light. I stood there for a while, heart pounding. Then I checked the cemetery gate. Still locked. No footprints in the frost-covered grass. I went back to the cruiser and sat there, watching the streetlight. For almost an hour. Nothing. When I finally pulled away, I thought maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I saw a shadow and made up the rest. But the next night? It happened again. Same place. Same time. Same man. Except this time, he was facing me from the start. I didn't get out of the car. I just stared at him through the windshield. He didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe. The third night, I brought backup. Officer Rachel Dunn came with me. I didn't tell her everything. Just said I'd seen a man loitering by the cemetery and wanted another set of eyes. When we pulled up, the man was already there. Rachel squinted. Is he wearing a mask? I don't think so, I said. We stepped out together, flashlights on. The man stayed under the light. Same coat. Same hat. Same smile. Rachel spoke up first. Sir, are you in need of assistance? No answer. We got within 10 feet. That's when the light went out. Not just flickered. It died. Pitch black. We both froze. Then the flashlight in my hand flickered too. Rachel's did the same. And in the dark, I swear I heard something whisper. Right between us. It wasn't a word. Just a sound. Like someone dragging a chair across a floor. When our lights came back on, he was gone again. Rachel looked pale. Where the hell did he go? I didn't answer. We searched the cemetery. Nothing. Not even a footprint. I asked around town over the next week. Quietly. No one admitted to seeing him, but some folks looked nervous when I brought up Maple Row. One old woman, Mrs. Callahan, told me her mother used to warn her about the watcher. A man who stood under streetlights, looking for someone who forgot the dead. I didn't know what that meant. But I started sleeping with my bedroom light on. It's been almost a year now. And every so often, I drive by Maple Row. That streetlight still flickers. Just for a second. As if it remembers. And sometimes, late at night, I feel like someone is watching me through the window. Standing perfectly still. Not breathing. Not blinking. Just smiling. I used to work night patrol in a small town called Hollow Creek. Nothing much ever happened there. A few break-ins, maybe a lost dog or two. Most nights were quiet. But some nights weren't. This story happened a few winters ago. I still think about it sometimes. Especially when the wind picks up. I was covering a back road that ran behind the old mill, Hollow Creek Road. Folks didn't use it much. It was dark, narrow, and full of dips. But it saved a few minutes if you were coming from the hills. That night was cold. The kind of cold that bites through your gloves. My patrol car heater worked, but barely. Outside, the trees were bare. Their branches looked like claws scratching at the sky. Everything was still. I was halfway down the road when I saw it. A light. It flickered up ahead, just past a sharp bend. At first, I thought it was another car. But as I got closer, I realized it wasn't moving. It was coming from the woods. I pulled over and turned off the engine. Silence. Just the ticking of my cooling engine and the soft crunch of snow settling. I rolled down the window. The air smelled like pine and frost. But there was something else too. A strange, sweet odor like spoiled fruit. I stepped out. The snow crunched beneath my boots. My flashlight flickered to life. The beam danced across the trees. There it was, just a few yards in. A soft yellow glow. Faint, like a candle behind a curtain. I radioed in my location. Just in case. Then I followed the light. The trees creaked in the wind. My breath hung in the air. The light stayed still. It didn't blink or sway. I reached a small clearing. And stopped. There was an old house there. Not on any map. Not listed in town records. Just there. It looked abandoned. The porch was sagging. The windows were cracked. The front door was half open. That soft yellow light was coming from inside. I felt my chest tighten. I should have called for backup. But something pulled me forward. I stepped onto the porch. The wood groaned beneath me. My flashlight caught old furniture inside. A couch covered in dust. Picture frames, crooked on the walls. A broken mirror by the stairs. And in the corner of the room an old lamp. It was on. But not plugged in. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Above me. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. I froze. Then they stopped. I called out. Hello? This is Officer Maynard. Is anyone here? No answer. I stepped inside. The air was thick. Dust clung to everything. My boots left prints on the wooden floor. I looked around. Nothing. I moved toward the stairs. That's when I noticed the pictures. Every frame on the wall showed the same house. But in each one, something was different. A figure, blurry at first, stood in the yard. In each photo, he moved closer. By the last one, he was at the front door. Staring in. I swallowed hard. I climbed the stairs slowly. Each step creaked louder than the last. My flashlight shook a little in my hand. The hallway upstairs was narrow. Cold air poured from a room at the end. The door was open. Inside was a child's bedroom. A small bed. A broken rocking horse. A closet door, half ajar. The lamp from downstairs shouldn't have worked. But this one was flickering too. And then the closet creaked. I turned toward it. My heart pounded in my ears. The door opened, just a little. I aimed my light. Nothing. But the smell from earlier? It was stronger now. Sweet. Rotten. Then came the whisper. Soft. Right by my ear. Do you see him now? I spun around. No one there. The rocking horse began to move. Slowly. Back and forth. Back and forth. I backed away. My foot hit something. A pair of shoes. Small. Dusty. Facing the closet. I ran. Down the stairs. Out the door. Through the trees. I didn't look back. When I reached my car, I locked the doors and radioed for backup. My voice was shaking. But when the others arrived, the house was gone. No clearing. No porch. No light. Just trees. Thick and quiet. We searched for hours. Nothing. The photos, the lamp, the footprints, all gone. Back at the station, I checked the maps again. No house. Not even old blueprints. But I know what I saw. And I wasn't the only one. Over the years, a few others have reported strange lights on Hollow Creek Road. Flickering from the woods. A soft yellow glow. I never drive down that road anymore. I stay away. And sometimes, late at night, I think about the voice. That whisper. Like it knew me. Like it had been waiting. I grew up in a quiet little town called Coldwater. Just rows of simple houses, big trees, and the kind of neighbors who waved even if they didn't know your name. I still live there. After my wife passed 2 years ago, I moved into my late uncle's place on Birch Street. It's an old 2-story house with a long driveway and a crooked mailbox. The kind of house that creaks even when no one's walking. I liked the peace. I needed it, honestly. After she died, everything felt loud. The silence here helped. At least for a while. There's a streetlight just across from the house. It flickers sometimes. Always has. My uncle used to say it was haunted, but sometimes he'd see a shadow standing beneath it, just watching the house. I never believed that. But lately, I've been thinking about what he said. It started one cold night in November. I was up late, reading in the living room. Wind was rattling the windows, and dead leaves scraped across the porch. I heard a click. The porch light had gone out. I walked to the window and peeked through the curtain. Across the street, under that flickering streetlight, I saw someone. A man. He was just standing there. Not moving. Not walking. Just still. His head tilted slightly, like he was looking straight at me. I waited. He didn't move. Then the streetlight blinked off. Total darkness. When it came back on, he was gone. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was the mailman, a teenager, someone walking their dog. Except it kept happening. Almost every night that week, I saw the same figure. Always after midnight. Always under the streetlight. Just standing. Watching. Once, I stepped outside to confront him. I even shouted. He didn't move. The light went out again. And when it came back on, he was standing closer, on the edge of my lawn. I locked the door and didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I checked the cameras I'd installed a few months earlier. Nothing showed up. Not a single frame. Just static during the times I swore I saw him. I thought about calling the police, but what could I say? There's a man watching me, but he disappears when the light flickers, and my cameras show static? They'd think I was losing it. So I said nothing. One night, I woke up to a tapping sound. Soft, but steady. Like someone tapping a finger on glass. I turned toward the window, and there he was. Standing right outside my bedroom window. Too tall to be normal. His head tilted again, like before. Only this time, I could see his face. Or rather, the lack of one. It was smooth. Pale. No eyes, no mouth. Just a blank face looking in at me. I jumped out of bed and ran to the window, yelling. But by the time I pulled the curtains back fully, he was gone. The next morning, I found footprints in the frost on the grass. Leading right up to the house. But none leading away. I started sleeping with the lights on. Then came the night I finally called the police. I'd been hearing scratching sounds in the attic. Not like mice or raccoons. Heavy. Slow. Like something dragging its nails along the wood beams. They came, looked around, found nothing. No signs of break-in. No signs of animals. They told me it was probably old pipes or settling wood. But I know what I heard. I know what I saw. I stopped sleeping altogether. Then, last week, something new happened. I came home from the grocery store and found a piece of paper folded on my pillow. My name was written on it in shaky letters. Inside, it just said, "Still watching. I live alone." My doors were locked. Windows closed. Alarm armed. But someone had been inside. That night, I sat in the living room with a baseball bat and a flashlight, just waiting. The street light flickered like always. And right at 2:13 a.m., there he was. Only this time, he wasn't outside. He was in the hallway. Just standing there. Closer than ever. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. Then he stepped back into the shadows, and he was gone. I don't remember falling asleep, but I woke up on the couch with the flashlight still in my hand. The baseball bat had rolled across the floor. I thought maybe it was a nightmare. Maybe I had finally lost it. But when I looked outside, the streetlight was off. Burned out completely. It's never come back on since. Now, every night, I wait. The house creaks. The wind howls. And sometimes, I hear the soft scrape of footsteps in the hallway, even when I'm alone. I haven't told anyone. Who would believe me? But I know he's still here. Watching. Waiting. I don't know what he wants. But I think he's waiting for something. Maybe for me to forget he's there. Maybe for me to let my guard down. And if you ever drive through Coldwater and pass the corner of Birch Street, look for the streetlight. Even if it's out. Especially if it's out. Because sometimes, the darkest things only show themselves when the light is gone. What do you think he was? Just a shadow? A ghost? Or something worse? Have you ever seen something that shouldn't have been there? I moved to Birch Hollow after my wife passed away. It was a quiet town in the hills of Pennsylvania. Not many people. Just enough to make it feel lived in. I rented a small house at the edge of the woods. The kind of place where you hear wind through the trees at night. And the floorboards creak even when no one's moving. That's what I wanted, really, silence. Somewhere to breathe. Somewhere to be alone with my thoughts. Most nights, I'd sit on the porch. There was an old streetlight just across the road. It didn't always work. Sometimes it would flicker. Like it couldn't decide whether to stay on or not. Didn't bother me. At least, not at first. Then, one night, I noticed something strange. The light flickered again, but this time, it felt like it was reacting to me. Every time I stood up, it would flash. Every time I stepped back, it would calm. I laughed it off. Told myself it was just faulty wiring. But the next night, the same thing happened. Then, it got weirder. I started seeing a shape under the light. At first, just a shadow. Could have been a bush, or a trick of the wind. But after a few nights, I knew it wasn't either. It looked like a man. Tall. Still. Too still. He would stand right under the light. But I couldn't see his face. Every time I tried to focus, the light would flicker wildly. Then, darkness. Complete and fast. And when the light came back on, he'd be gone. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe a grieving man? Alone in a quiet house. Seeing figures in the night? But it started to affect me. I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing things outside. Whispers. Light footsteps on leaves. One night, I called the town's electrical office. Asked if they could come fix the light. The guy on the line paused. "You said Birch Hollow Road?" "Yeah," I replied. "That one's tricky," he said. "We've replaced the bulb 3 times this year. It always burns out again in a week. You're not the first to ask." Something in his voice made my skin crawl. That night, I decided to stay inside. I didn't even go near the window. But at exactly 2:13 a.m., my porch light turned on. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't even left the switch on. I walked slowly to the front window. Drew back the curtain just enough to peek. There he was. Under the streetlight. Closer now. Maybe just 10 feet from my porch. He wasn't moving. But something about him looked broken. Like his limbs were too long. Like his head tilted just a little too far to the side. And then he waved. Not a friendly wave. It was slow. Stiff. Almost like his arm had never done that before. I shut the curtain. Backed away. My heart thudding so loud I could hear it echo in my ears. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I found something on my porch. A strip of paper. Torn. Faded. It looked like an old photo. But all I could make out was a child's drawing of a stick figure. Standing under a streetlight. That was the final straw. I packed a small bag. Got in my truck. And drove straight to the sheriff's office. I told him everything. Didn't care if I sounded crazy. He sat there quietly, listening. Then he said, "You're not the first, Mr. Langley." I blinked. "What do you mean?" He opened a drawer. Pulled out a small folder. Inside were photos. Drawings. Letters. Every one of them had the same thing. A man under a flickering streetlight. "The light's been here longer than the road," he said. "Locals call him the Watcher. Shows up when people are grieving. When they're lost. He never hurts anyone. But he always leaves something behind." He looked at me. "Did he leave you something?" I nodded. "A drawing." He closed the folder. "Then you've been marked. He doesn't follow you, not usually. But you'll never forget him now. And if you stay too long, he might come closer." I left town the same day. Didn't even go back to grab the rest of my things. That was months ago. I live in Ohio now. Different town. Different house. But last night, as I was sitting on my new porch, I saw the streetlight across the road flicker. Just once. But it was enough. Hey everyone. I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way. My name's Ben. I've been the night officer in a small town called Maple Hollow for over 20 years. It's quiet here. Real quiet. Folks are kind, everyone knows each other, and the biggest crime we usually get is a stolen lawn gnome or a teenager breaking curfew. But there's one place in town that's always made me uneasy. Locals call it Miller's Curve. It's this sharp bend in the road just past the old train tracks. No houses nearby. Just trees, wind, and silence. That curve has taken more lives than I care to count. People say it's cursed. I never believed it, until that night. It was early November. Cold wind, leaves blowing across the road like whispers. I was doing my usual patrol around 2 a.m., sipping bad gas station coffee and listening to static on the radio. That's when the dispatch came in. Unit 3, we've got a 911 hang-up. Pinged near Miller's Curve. My stomach tightened. I tried to brush it off. Probably a butt dial. Still, I turned the car around and headed toward the bend. The sky was moonless. My headlights cut through fog that seemed too thick for that time of year. I slowed the cruiser as I approached the curve. That's when I saw the light. A single streetlight stood at the bend. But here's the thing, we don't have a streetlight there. Never have. It flickered softly, like it was trying to stay awake. Beneath it stood a girl. Maybe 15 or 16. Pale skin. Long black hair. No jacket. Just a white dress that didn't belong in November. I stopped the car and got out slowly. "Miss? Are you okay?" She didn't move. I stepped closer. The air felt heavy, like I'd stepped into water. I could hear buzzing low and deep, like electricity humming through the ground. My boots crunched leaves as I walked, but her feet were silent. "Do you live around here?" I asked. Still nothing. Just staring. That's when she turned and walked toward the woods. "I know what you're thinking, follow her, right?" So I did. I kept calling out, but she never looked back. The flashlight in my hand started flickering, and my radio cut out completely. Static. I stopped and looked around. Couldn't see the cruiser anymore. The fog had swallowed everything. "Miss, please stop." She vanished behind a tree. I ran after her, heart pounding. But when I reached the tree, she was gone. Just gone. No footprints. No sound. Just cold. I stood there, trying to catch my breath, when I heard it sobbing. Soft. Broken. Coming from ahead. I should have turned back. I wanted to turn back. But something pulled me forward. I found a clearing with an old swing set in the middle. Rusted chains. No house nearby. No path. Just that one swing, swaying gently. The sobbing stopped. That's when I noticed something on the swing. A cell phone. I picked it up. The screen lit up, showing a photo of the same girl I had just seen. But her eyes were scratched out in the picture. Like someone had taken a blade to it. I dropped it. And then everything changed. The swing stopped moving. The air went still. And behind me, I heard a voice. "You're not supposed to be here." It was a whisper, but it hit me like a gunshot. I turned slowly. There she was. Right behind me. Same pale face. Same dress. But her eyes were gone. Just dark hollows. And her mouth was too wide. Like it had been torn open at the corners. I stumbled back. My flashlight hit the ground and went dark. She didn't chase me. She just watched. And whispered. "Go." I didn't wait. I ran like hell back toward the road. Branches scraped my arms. My breath felt like fire. I finally saw the cruiser's headlights and jumped in, locking the doors. When I looked back, the light at the curve was gone. The girl was gone. But my boots were wet, covered in mud. And on the passenger seat was the cell phone. I drove straight back to the station. Threw the phone into evidence, but when the tech tried to boot it up, it was completely dead. No battery. No data. Like it never existed. I didn't file a full report. Just said I didn't find anything. But that girl? She's still out there. Some say she was a runaway. Others say she was hit by a truck years ago and her ghost haunts the curve. I don't know the truth. All I know is I never drive that way anymore. Not at night. And if you ever see a light at Miller's Curve, keep driving. Don't stop. It was just past 1 a.m. when Officer Jake Harris drove down Sparrow Lane. The town of Pine Hollow was always quiet in the winter, especially after the snow started to fall. Jake didn't mind the silence. Some nights, it helped him forget everything else, his divorce, the empty house, the cold meals. That night was colder than usual. The kind of cold that stung your cheeks and made the windows fog up even with the heat turned high. His radio crackled softly, but there was no real call. Just routine patrol. As he passed the old Miller house near the end of the lane, something caught his eye. A light. Just one. It flickered in the upstairs window. Then went out. Then flickered again. Jake pulled over. That house had been empty for years. Everyone in town knew it. Mrs. Miller passed away a long time ago, and her kids never came back to sell it. The place was falling apart, shutters broken, mailbox rusted, weeds climbing up the porch rails. So why was there a light? Jake sat there a moment, staring. Snowflakes drifted onto his windshield. He didn't move. He didn't want to. Something about that flicker didn't feel right. He reached for the radio. Unit 12 checking out a light at the Miller house. Probably nothing. I'll take a quick look. No one answered. Dead air. He frowned, grabbed his flashlight, and stepped out. The wind hit him like a slap. Cold and sharp. His boots crunched on the icy road. He walked toward the house, the old wood porch groaning under his weight. It smelled like wet leaves and dust. The kind of smell that clings to your jacket. He knocked once, out of habit. Of course, no one answered. The front door creaked open with one gentle push. Inside, it was darker than he expected. No electricity. No sound. Just the faint whistle of wind through cracked windows. His flashlight beam danced across peeling wallpaper and broken picture frames. Police, Jake called out, his voice barely echoing. No answer. He moved through the living room. Old furniture sat like ghosts in the dust. A broken mirror leaned against the wall, its surface cracked down the middle. He stepped onto the staircase. Each step creaked loudly, as if warning the house he was coming. When he reached the top, he saw it again, the flicker. This time, from the room at the end of the hall. It was faint, like candlelight. Jake moved slowly, his flashlight held high. He felt it then, pressure. Not fear. Not yet. Just heaviness. Like the air itself was thick. He pushed open the door. The room was nearly empty. Just an old rocking chair, sitting in the corner. And on the floor, a phone. It was lit up, playing an old home video on loop. The kind you'd find on a phone from years ago. The screen showed a little girl in a backyard, giggling as she chased bubbles. Jake's breath caught. He remembered this. The Millers had a daughter. Emily. She died when she was 10. Fell through the ice behind the house one winter. That video, it must have been hers. But whose phone was this? He knelt down to pick it up. The second his fingers touched it, the video stopped. The screen went black. Then, slowly, the rocking chair began to move. Back and forth. Back and forth. Jake stood frozen. There was no wind in the room. No draft. Nothing that could have made it move. Then came the sound. A soft whisper. From behind him. Daddy? He turned around fast. No one was there. But the air had changed. It was colder. Heavy. The kind of cold that sinks into your bones and makes you feel like crying. Jake backed out of the room, slowly, flashlight shaking in his hand. The hallway stretched longer now. Like the house had grown. He walked faster. Then ran. Down the stairs, out the door, back to his car. His breath came in clouds as he slammed the door shut and locked it. His hands trembled. He looked up. The light in the window flickered once more. Then, nothing. The next morning, he filed no report. When asked, he said the light was a reflection from a car passing by. He told himself that was true. But that night, and the nights after, he couldn't stop thinking about it. He left the phone on the steps. He didn't take it with him. He didn't want to. 2 days later, someone found it again. Still playing the same video. Some say the house just holds old memories. Others think Emily never left. But Jake? He knows what he heard. He knows that voice. Have you ever felt watched in your own home? Ever heard your name whispered in an empty room? Sometimes, it's just the wind. Other times, it's something else. What do you think? I grew up in a quiet town called Maple Hollow. It's the kind of place where everyone waves, and nothing strange ever happens. Or at least, that's what I used to think. My name is Chris. I've lived here my whole life. I'm 30 now. I work part-time at the hardware store and spend most nights alone. My mom passed away last year. It still feels strange waking up and not hearing her humming in the kitchen. Since she died, the house feels colder. Quieter. Like something's missing. One night in late October, right before Halloween, I went for a drive. I do that sometimes when I can't sleep. I just roll the windows down, turn the music low, and drive around town. The wind was sharp that night. Cold enough to make the leaves dance across the road like little ghosts. I found myself on a road we call Whispering Road. It's an old street that runs along the edge of town, past some woods and a few empty houses. Not many people go there anymore. The trees grow thick on both sides, and the streetlights flicker like they're tired. As I turned the corner onto the road, my headlights caught something on the shoulder. A man. He was standing still. Right at the edge of the trees. He wore a long coat and a dark hat. He didn't move as I passed, didn't wave, didn't turn his head. He just stood there, facing the road. I slowed down, rolled my window down a little, and called out, "You okay, sir?" He didn't answer. His face was hard to see in the shadows. But I noticed something that made my stomach twist. His mouth was moving. He was whispering. But no sound came out. I didn't like the way it felt. Like I was being watched, even though he wasn't looking at me. I drove off, faster this time, telling myself he was just a homeless man or maybe drunk. But something didn't sit right. When I got home, I locked the doors and pulled the curtains shut. But I kept thinking about him. About the way he whispered. About how the woods behind him didn't make a sound, not even the wind. The next day, I told my neighbor about it. He's a retired cop. He gave me a strange look and said, "You saw him too?" I laughed a little, thinking he was joking. But he wasn't. He told me a story from the 90s. About a man who died on Whispering Road. He'd lost his wife in a fire. Some say he went mad. He was last seen walking into those woods. They found his coat a week later. But not him. People around town started reporting a man standing by the trees. Always whispering. Always silent. I saw him once, my neighbor said. 30 years ago. You don't forget a thing like that. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I looked out the window toward the backyard. And froze. He was there. Not close. Just standing near the old oak tree. Same coat. Same hat. still whispering. I backed away from the window and turned off all the lights. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, I went out to check the yard. There were no footprints. But the grass was pressed down like someone had been standing there, watching. I called the sheriff's office. They said they'd send someone to check it out. A young officer named Megan showed up. She seemed calm, like she'd heard stranger things. After I explained, she paused and said, "You're not the first one to report this. Something's going on here." She looked at the woods behind my yard and said she'd patrol the area for the next few nights. That helped me feel better. 2 nights later, I got a call from Megan. Her voice was shaky. She said, "Chris, I saw him. I saw the man." She had been driving down Whispering Road. When she passed the trees, her radio started crackling. Static filled the car. And then, whispering. Not from the radio. From the back seat. She turned around. Nothing was there. But when she looked back at the road, he was standing in front of her car. She hit the brakes and got out, hand on her gun. But he was gone. Now she can't sleep either. It's been a week. Every night, I hear whispering outside my window. Always around 2:13 a.m. It doesn't feel like a dream. I've recorded it, but nothing ever plays back. Sometimes I think I see him at the edge of the trees. Just barely. I haven't told many people. Most wouldn't believe it. But a few do. Last night, Megan stopped by. She looked pale. Tired. She said she found an old police report from 1993. The man who vanished was named Thomas Ray. His wife's name was Anna. She died in a fire in the woods near Whispering Road. Before Thomas disappeared, he told his neighbors he could still hear her voice at night, whispering his name. Now, I wonder if that's what we're hearing too. Tonight, I plan to stay up. I want to see if he appears again. Maybe I'll talk to him. Maybe I'll ask what he wants. Or maybe I'll just keep driving past that road and never stop again. What would you do? Would you talk to him? Or would you pretend you never saw him? I was the only night officer in a small town called Miller's Creek, tucked deep in northern Pennsylvania. We had one blinking traffic light, a diner that closed by 8, and roads so quiet you could hear your own breathing on patrol. It was early November. The kind of night where the cold sneaks into your bones. Leaves were still falling, crunching under my boots when I stepped outside. There was fog in the air. Thick. Almost milky. You could barely see more than a few yards ahead. I was in my cruiser, sipping bad gas station coffee, when the call came in. It was a landline. That already felt strange. No one really used landlines anymore, not unless you were old school or paranoid about smartphones listening in. Dispatch said it came from 142, Hemlock Road. The address didn't ring a bell. I checked my system. Nothing recent. Just a note saying the house had been vacant since 2003. That gave me pause. I thought maybe someone had broken in. Or maybe a squatter had found a way to call. I grabbed my flashlight and headed out. Hemlock Road was 5 miles from town, right along the edge of the old state forest. The fog was worse there. My headlights barely cut through it. I drove slow, watching the trees bend slightly in the wind. A few dead branches had fallen across the road. When I pulled up to the house, I stopped. It was run down, like something out of an old photo. The porch sagged in the middle. One shutter was hanging loose. The mailbox was missing. But the light on the second floor was on. That shouldn't have been possible. The town had cut the power to this place years ago. Still, I got out and walked toward the porch. My boots made soft thuds on the wood. It creaked under my weight. I knocked. Nothing. I tried the door. It wasn't locked. Inside, it smelled like old paper and something damp. The kind of smell you find in attics or basements that haven't been opened in decades. I called out. Police. Anyone here? Still nothing. I stepped inside and saw the living room. Dusty. Cobwebs everywhere. An old coat rack with one long gray coat still hanging. There was a photo on the wall of a family. Faded. Too faded to see faces. I moved deeper into the house, shining my light on each corner. Everything was still. No signs of people. No sound. Just that deep, cold silence that feels like it's pressing on your ears. I walked toward the stairs. The light upstairs was still on. It buzzed faintly, like an old fluorescent bulb struggling to stay alive. The stairs groaned as I stepped up. Halfway to the top, I heard it. A phone ringing. A real, old-fashioned house phone. The kind that sat on a desk, with a long cord and heavy receiver. The ringing came from the room at the end of the hall. The door was cracked open. A soft yellow light spilled through. I walked slowly, hand near my holster, heart pounding louder than my steps. When I pushed open the door, I saw the phone. It was sitting on a desk beside a dusty lamp. The kind you turn by twisting a knob. The lamp was on. The phone was ringing. But here's the thing, the phone wasn't plugged in. No line. No wall connection. Just sitting there, ringing like it still had something to say. I stared at it for a moment, then picked it up. There was a pause. No dial tone. Just silence. Then, a voice. Faint. Female. Crying. He never came home, she whispered. I didn't move. I couldn't. The voice was soft, like wind through dry leaves. I waited. Every night. He said he'd be back, but he never came. I tried to speak. My mouth felt dry. Who is this? I asked. The voice didn't answer. Just one long breath. And then a click. The line went dead. I stood there for a long time. The room was cold. I could see my breath now. Even with the lamp on. I turned around and froze. There was a man in the hallway. Tall. Still. Wearing a dark coat. He didn't speak. Didn't move. I blinked and he was gone. I don't remember walking back down the stairs. Just flashes, my feet hitting the wood, the cold air, the sound of the screen door creaking as I ran outside. I got into my cruiser and locked the doors. The house behind me looked dark now. No porch light. No second floor light. No lamp in the window. It was like it had never been on. I drove back to the station. Quiet. Thinking maybe I'd imagined it. Stress. Sleep deprivation. But when I got back, there was a message waiting on my desk. Typed. Not handwritten. Not emailed. Just sitting there on plain white paper. He still hasn't come home. No name. No explanation. Just that. I checked the call logs. Dispatch said there was no record of a call to 142 Hemlock Road that night. I even drove out the next morning with another officer. The house was gone. Nothing but a foundation covered in weeds. No coat rack. No phone. No second floor. Just space. I haven't told many people. And maybe you'll think I made it up. But sometimes, late at night, my desk phone rings once. Just once. And when I pick up, there's no one there. Hey everyone! I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way. It was late October in the quiet town of Maplewood, a place where everyone knew each other's names and secrets. The streets were lined with tall maple trees, their leaves turning fiery red and orange. A cold wind whispered through the branches, carrying the faint smell of wood smoke and damp earth. Jake was a local deputy. He'd lived in Maplewood all his life. Lately, he'd been feeling tired, not just from work, but from everything else too. His wife had passed away a year ago, and the house felt emptier than ever. The loneliness settled deep inside him, like the chilly October air that crept under his door at night. On this night, Jake was finishing his patrol near the edge of town. The streetlights flickered weakly through the fog that was rolling in from the forest. He noticed an old wooden house sitting alone on a hill, its paint peeling and windows dark. It had been empty for years, but rumors said strange things happened there. As he drove past, his radio crackled. Static filled the air for a moment before a faint voice whispered, "Help me." Jake stopped the car. He looked around, but no one was near. He shook his head and laughed softly. Probably just the wind messing with the radio. Still, a knot formed in his stomach. Later, back at home, Jake sat in his creaky armchair by the fireplace. The house was quiet except for the soft crackling of the fire and the occasional groan of the old wooden floors. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through old pictures of his wife, Sarah. Her smile was warm, but the ache of losing her was sharp. Suddenly, the screen flickered. The phone's battery was full, but the screen blinked off and on like something was trying to get his attention. A message appeared from an unknown number, "Don't trust the dark." Jake frowned. He didn't know the number. He replied, "Who is this?" No answer. Minutes later, his phone buzzed again with a short video. It showed the old house on the hill, but the video was shaky, as if someone was moving quickly. Then, a dark shadow crossed the window, too fast to be a person. Jake felt a chill. He tried calling the number, but it went straight to voicemail. He looked outside. The fog had thickened, swirling like a ghostly mist. The streetlights flickered again. A sudden tapping noise came from the window. He stood up slowly and walked to the window. No one was there. His heart beat faster. He remembered the radio whisper and the message, "Don't trust the dark." His mind raced. Could someone be playing a cruel joke? Or was it something else? Jake decided to check the old house. If someone was sending these messages, he had to know why. He grabbed his flashlight and coat, stepping out into the cold night. The wind bit at his face as he walked up the hill toward the house. The wooden porch creaked beneath his boots. The door was slightly ajar. He pushed it open slowly. Inside, the air was thick and stale. The faint smell of mold and dust filled his nose. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, landing on old furniture covered in sheets. As he moved deeper, he heard a soft whisper. "Leave." The voice was barely audible, like a breeze brushing past his ear. Jake froze. A shadow flickered at the edge of his light. He swung the beam, but nothing was there. The tapping started again, this time from the walls themselves. Nails or wood shifting. A sudden coldness surrounded him, making his breath visible in the air. He tried to call out, but his voice caught in his throat. Suddenly, the flashlight went out. Darkness swallowed him whole. Jake's heart pounded in the silence. Then, footsteps echoed, slow and deliberate, coming closer from the upstairs. He fumbled for his phone in his pocket, the screen barely lit. A figure appeared at the top of the stairs, tall, dark, and still. No face, just shadow. Jake took a step back, his breath shallow. The figure raised a hand, pointing toward the basement door. Jake's legs moved on their own, leading him down the creaky stairs. The basement was colder, the smell stronger, like earth and old secrets. In the corner, an old music box sat open, playing a haunting melody. Jake's skin crawled. Suddenly, the music stopped. The shadow figure was gone. But the basement door slammed shut behind him. He tried the handle. Locked. Trapped. He heard whispering all around him, voices overlapping, pleading, warning. Don't trust the dark. Suddenly, his phone buzzed with a final message, find the light. Jake looked up to see a faint glow coming from under a small trapdoor. With trembling hands, he pushed it open. Sunlight spilled down the steps. He climbed out, gasping. Outside, the fog was lifting. The old house stood silent. Jake walked away slowly, the morning birds starting to sing. But as he looked back, the shadow lingered briefly in the upstairs window. What do you think happened to Jake that night? Have you ever felt a presence watching you when no one was around? Sometimes, the darkest places hide the quietest secrets. I never liked the old Miller house at the end of Willow Lane. It stood there for as long as I could remember, dark and empty, with peeling paint and windows like watching eyes. The wind always seemed colder near it. My town, Maplewood, was small and quiet, and everyone had their stories about the place, how strange noises came from inside, or how lights flickered late at night. I didn't believe all the talk, but I felt uneasy whenever I passed by. My name is Jake. I'm a local police officer, but this story isn't about crime or criminals. It's about something else, something I still don't fully understand. It was late October, just before Halloween. The nights were getting longer, and the air had that crisp edge that made you pull your jacket tighter. The trees along Willow Lane were almost bare, their branches tapping against the streetlights like restless fingers. The fog had started rolling in, thick and slow, swallowing the edges of the road. That evening, I was finishing a late shift. The small town had been quiet, as usual. I decided to take a shortcut home through the neighborhood near the Miller house. I wanted to get inside and forget the long day. As I walked, I noticed the streetlights flickering, casting strange shadows on the cracked sidewalks. When I passed the Miller house, something caught my eye, a soft glow from the upstairs window. I stopped. I knew the house was empty. No one had lived there for years. The glow wasn't steady like a lamp, it flickered like a candle, or maybe a fire. My heart beat a little faster. I wasn't a superstitious man, but that night, I felt a chill creep up my spine. The wind carried a faint smell, something like burning wood mixed with damp earth. The old wooden porch creaked in the wind, as if the house itself was breathing. I debated going around and checking, but I shook it off. Maybe a neighbor had left a light on, or maybe my tired mind was playing tricks. I kept walking. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of the flickering light haunted my thoughts. I kept hearing soft tapping sounds in my room, like someone gently knocking on the window. When I looked, there was nothing but the rustling trees and the thick fog outside. The next morning, I decided to visit the Miller house during daylight. I wanted to see if anything strange was going on. The front door was locked, but the side gate was slightly open. I hesitated but pushed it gently. The air inside the yard was cold and still, and the grass was overgrown. As I walked closer, I noticed something on the porch, an old music box, dust-covered and slightly cracked. I picked it up. The box was heavy and cold to the touch. I wound it up out of curiosity, and a soft, eerie melody began to play, a slow, haunting tune that seemed out of place. I felt a sudden wave of sadness wash over me, like a distant memory trying to reach out. I left the music box on the porch and stepped back. Suddenly, the house seemed quieter, almost holding its breath. That night, I kept the music box by my bed. The melody played softly in my mind. Around midnight, I woke up to a whisper, barely louder than the wind, calling my name. Jake, it seemed to say. My room was cold, and I could see my breath in the air. The lights flickered again, and shadows stretched along the walls like dark fingers. I sat up, heart pounding, and looked toward the window. There, just outside, I saw a shadow figure, tall and thin, with no face, only a dark void where I should be. It stood motionless, watching me. I blinked, and it was gone. I told myself it was a nightmare, the stress of work and the strange music box getting to me. But every night after, the whispers came back. Sometimes I saw the shadow in the corner of my room, always silent, always watching. I started feeling more anxious, more tired. The line between waking and dreaming blurred. The music box melody haunted me like a sad lullaby I couldn't forget. One evening, I tried to get rid of the box. I took it outside and threw it into the river near my house. But when I woke up the next day, it was back on my nightstand. I don't know how it got there. I don't want to know. Sometimes, I wonder if the house at the end of Willow Lane is alive in some way. If it holds the memories and sorrows of the people who lived there before. Maybe the shadow is a guardian or a lost soul. What do you think happened to that music box? Have you ever felt something watching you when no one else was around? Sometimes, I still hear the melody on quiet nights, and I wonder if the shadow will ever leave. Would you want to face it, or would you turn away like I almost did? I'm Lauren. I live in a small town called Cedar Ridge. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your name, and the streets feel safe. But some nights, even in places like this, the quiet can hide something strange. Last fall, after Halloween, the weather turned cold fast. The wind rattled the old wooden houses, and the streetlights flickered more than usual. The fog rolled in thick, curling around the trees and creeping down the empty roads. It smelled like wet leaves and something else, something faint but sharp, like burnt wood. I was still feeling the weight of losing my dad that summer. He had been sick for a long time, and the house felt emptier without him. I was lonely, anxious, and sometimes, I felt like I was losing my mind. My phone was my lifeline. I spent a lot of time scrolling through old photos and messages from my dad. But lately, it started acting weird. One night, as the wind howled outside, my phone screen lit up by itself. At first, I thought it was a notification. But there was nothing there, no messages, no calls. Just a black screen with one word glowing in white letters, "Come." I froze. My heart pounded. I told myself it was a glitch, or maybe my imagination. I tried to turn it off, but the phone wouldn't respond. It stayed lit with that single word for minutes. Then the power flickered. The lights in the living room dimmed, and the old house creaked louder. I pulled my blanket tighter and waited. Nothing else happened. I told myself I was being silly. Technology glitches happen. Right? The next few nights, the phone did it again. Sometimes it showed "Come." Other times, "Look." Or "Find." I didn't want to go anywhere. I felt scared and trapped in my own home. The fog outside thickened every night, and the streets were empty. One evening, I went into the attic. My dad used to keep old things up there, boxes of memories and dusty furniture. I was hoping to find something that could help me feel close to him. The air was cold and smelled like dust and old wood. My flashlight flickered as I moved between the boxes. Suddenly, I heard a faint tapping. It was soft but steady, like someone knocking on an old window. I stopped and listened. The tapping moved around the attic, coming closer and then fading away. My skin prickled. I found a small music box under a pile of blankets. It was old and worn, with faded flowers painted on top. I opened it, and a soft, eerie melody played. It reminded me of a lullaby my dad used to hum. Then the tapping started again, this time louder and faster. The music box stopped suddenly. I ran downstairs, heart racing. I didn't want to be in that attic anymore. The phone lit up one last time that night. This time, it showed a blurry photo of the music box, taken from inside the attic. I didn't know what to think. Was someone watching me? Or was it something else? I asked my friend Jake about it. He's a tech guy and didn't believe in ghosts or anything supernatural. He said maybe the phone was hacked or haunted by a virus. But it didn't feel like technology. It felt personal. Like someone, or something, was trying to reach me. After that, strange things started happening around the house. Doors would slam shut on their own. Lights flickered when no one was there. Sometimes, I thought I saw shadowy shapes moving just beyond the corner of my eye. I wanted to leave, but I didn't know where to go. Cedar Ridge was my home, even if it felt haunted now. One cold night, the power went out completely. The house was pitch black except for my phone's glow. It buzzed with messages I hadn't sent. Words typed themselves on the screen, slow and clear, "Don't forget me." I sat frozen, tears running down my face. I whispered, "Dad?" No answer. Only the sound of the wind outside and the faint tapping on the windows. I still don't know if it was really my dad or something else. Sometimes I think the house is alive, holding on to memories like me. Have you ever felt a presence when no one was there? Heard a voice in the silence? Or seen something move that you can't explain? What do you think is waiting in the quiet corners of your own home? The small town of Pine Hollow was the kind of place where everyone knew your name. It sat quiet and still under the early October sky, wrapped in a chill that hinted at the coming winter. The wind slipped through the trees like a whisper, carrying with it the dry scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke. I'm Megan, a schoolteacher in this little town. I moved here after losing my husband last year. It wasn't easy being alone in a new place, surrounded by memories and silence. The nights felt longer, colder somehow, and the old house I rented creaked in ways that made me jump more than once. One night, just after Halloween, the power went out across Pine Hollow. The whole town was dark. Outside, the streetlights flickered weakly, casting strange shadows that danced along the empty roads. I wrapped myself in a thick sweater and lit some candles. The soft glow was comforting, but also strange, like the shadows had grown larger, watching me. My phone had no signal. I was cut off. A sense of loneliness crept in deeper. That's when I noticed the old music box sitting on my windowsill. It was a gift from my late husband, one of the few things I kept from our life together. I'd never dared open it. It looked delicate, worn, and somehow alive. But tonight, in the stillness, the tiny latch seemed to shift, and soft notes began to play on their own. The melody was sweet but sad, a lullaby that pulled at my heart. I reached out, but the music stopped when my fingers brushed the box. I felt the room grow colder. A faint tapping came from the window. I looked up and saw nothing but swirling fog outside. Then the tapping moved, slow steps on the porch, a creak of the wooden boards. I held my breath, trying to tell myself it was just the old house settling. But then, a shadow passed across the frosted glass. A dark shape, thin and tall, standing just beyond the porch light's reach. I wanted to call out, but my voice caught. My heart hammered. The shadow didn't move away. It lingered, as if waiting. I grabbed the music box and closed it tight. The tapping stopped. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on me. The next morning, the power returned. My phone buzzed back to life with messages and calls I hadn't heard all night. Friends warned me about the strange blackout and odd noises people heard around town. I shared my own story, and some nodded knowingly. The Hat Man, they said, almost in a whisper. An old legend about a shadowy figure who visits those alone in the dark. Some say he watches, others say he waits. That night, I stayed with a friend. But the music box was gone from my windowsill. I don't know if it moved on its own, or if something took it. Sometimes, when I'm alone, I hear the faint notes of that lullaby drifting through the house. And the tapping at the window starts again. Have you ever felt watched when no one was there? What do you think the music box means? Is the Hat Man just a story, or something real hiding in the shadows? Hey everyone! I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way.